Drives into the 95 of Folks. Here comes the caution.
Flag is dropped here at Daytona and away go for the first time. Nicholas Morcel, Sean.
Looks like most get through unscathed. Look at that, there's Reed Gibson. A big move at the inside line of Dom's, possibly a little bit of contact.
Up now as we've got 3 wide action going through turns 1 and 2.
And they're underway. Eric Hahn takes a nice jump. Wilson hasn't let him go very far.
Go out here for Circuit Spa Francorchamps. Alex Johnson's off to a brilliant start there.
Just how oddly shaped this one is. We saw in the background Eric Hahn go for a bit of a swing, and he's gone and he's over.
New stuff. Cody Graham's the one-on-one up into second place. Alex Johnson 6/10 lead at the moment.
J2ICS up front. There's Andrew Kessel, just insane.
They are ready to go. The lights are out and away we go for the very first time here at Okayama International Circuit. Finley Fitzsimmons.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to the Just Two Idiots Cup Series. It's the Endurance Series, sponsored by Designers Home Gallery. We're at Interlagos here today. It's Season 8, Round 4, and it is the Crown Jewel. Filling in for Mason Heimbaugh, I'm your host, James East, accompanied by the world-famous Gareth McAllister, the Thunder from Down Under, helping to bring me the action 1080p 60 frames a second. Gareth, welcome back to the booth for this prestigious event, and it is going to be a good one here today in Brazil.
Yeah, g'day everyone. I'm really glad to be here. And James, just for your information and everyone else's, Thunder from Down Under is actually a male strippers group, so hopefully I'm not thrown in with them again in the future. Thanks, James. It's great to be here and really looking forward to a race at Interlagos here tonight. We have a pretty nice grid, pretty solid turnout here for this 2-hour Crown Jewel event, so really looking forward to what we'll see. Hopefully the track isn't too hot for these guys, as what often happens here at Brazil is it's quite a hot track underneath the cars, so hopefully not too many sliding around.
Yeah, looking at the air and track temp, looks like about 68 degrees air temp, about 72 degrees on the racing surface itself proper. So, I mean, Gareth, you've got a lot more experience in these GTE machines than I do. How do you think that temp is for these drivers out there today?
Well, I can tell you that it's going to feel really bad on these cold tires. I must admit I had a few practice goes the other night just to see what these drivers might be dealing with, especially early on in these runs. And with cold tires, no temperature in them, and with, it looks like 73 degrees, not going to be an extremely hot track outside, but definitely hot enough to the point where if you're on those cold tires, before you get them warmed up by about a lap or two, it will feel like it's sliding around a lot. These GTE machines do have a bit of downforce to help the drivers along, but they also weigh quite a bit. It's a bit sad to see that in the modern World Endurance Championship, the LM, oh man, I'm struggling. The LM GTE AM, I believe, is the official class name. The amateur GTEs in the World Endurance Championship are actually going, is the breaking news in the real world of things. So it's nice to see these guys coming out here and celebrating GTEs based on that news as well.
Now, I'm super excited. As a reminder to the fans out at home, let us know where you're from, who you're cheering on the spectator area. We've already seen Penny Dickinson in the chat as well, so good to see her cheering on that number 64 machine, who happens to be on pole here, Gareth. And speaking of pole, let's go ahead and run through the grid here today. On pole, Dickinson, the number 64 machine. Simply Steve starting second. Joshua Spears starting third. Ton Lowe starts fourth. Noah Hu starting fifth. Captain CK starting sixth. Nick Beaver starting seventh. Just Dylan starting eighth. Notavent starts ninth. Eat My Dust starting 10th. Urko starts 11th. Bob Nova starting 12th. Cycled on back, we've got Prince Adam starting 13th. Joe Albany starting 14th. Nicolator starts in the 15th place grid. Biker Pilot starting 16th. Sector starts 17th. Garlic Dog starting 18th. Book starts 19th. Cruz starting 20th. Paper Bag starting 21st. Matthew Kasuda, who doesn't have a nickname yet, starting 22nd. Ace starts 23rd. Troy Banks starting 24th to round out the grid here today.
Yeah, Banks with that 888 machine also doesn't have a nickname out here tonight, so they're going to have to do something in this league to sort them out pretty soon. As we do know, these guys in the Just Two Idiots Cup Series, they do love their nicknames. giving plenty to all their drivers. Have a bit of fun as well as a serious side out here tonight, which is always nice to see. A very nice change of pace, and looking forward to a good one here tonight, James.
Yeah, I'm as well. And while we have the moment, as a reminder as well to the fans at home, for over 2 decades, Designers Home Gallery has been saving the world from ugly floors. For the first time in their company's history, they are now saving the world from ugly racecraft as well. If you or someone you know is passionate about racing and wants to improve their skills, it might be worth checking out the services offered by Designers Home Gallery and J2ICS. Remember, no one saves the world from ugly floors in racing quite like Designers Home Gallery. And as a little birdie told me, every order you place this week, they will include a small bag of Haribo sugar-free gummy bears that are now discontinued. So get the order in and let them know James and Gareth from Team Goon Squad sent you. As Gareth, it looks like drivers are under eye-pacing conditions here at Interlagos, and we are ready to get this show started.
Yeah, very excited to get this show started. And sorry to put you on the spot a bit, James, but is it possible to get Designers Home Gallery to deliver internationally, or is it more just a local thing if you know that much?
I believe it is mostly a North America based. I will get confirmation on that. I'm not sure, but I feel fairly confident that they cater more to an American audience.
I'm not really surprised, to be honest with you, but hey, I guess I'll have to put up with the unfortunate flooring I have in my house for the moment.
Yeah, ugly floors and ugly racecraft. They help fix all of it here. We've got Blazing Colin 272 cheering on Garlic Dog. Garlic's going to be starting around that 18th place position. Now, Gareth, what's going to be the move from these drivers? It's a 2-hour endurance race. It's going to be several stops out here with about a half tank of fuel limited to these drivers. Are we going to see guys pushing hard early on, or do you think drivers are going to be a little bit patient here to start things off?
Well, some drivers will probably push it pretty hard here, James. I reckon at the start they're going to try to send it 3 wide, potentially even 4 wide into turn 1, which could end up in disaster. We're hoping, knowing that it's a 2-hour race, will make some of these drivers calm it down a little bit. We'll see if we can last the distance as we get ready, and we go to green right now, and there's a nice jump up the front with the first 3 all taking it in solo file.
Yeah, it looked like Simply Steve had a rough start there in the number 1 machine. Losing a spot to Joshua Steers, going to lose another here to Tonlo, working that inside line. Here comes you-know-who in the green and black number 7, but look at Dickinson out front. Already pulls a half second the rest of the field, and seems like it's going to be a battle for 3rd place back with Simply Steve, Tonlo, and you-know-who watching as Dickinson and Spears kind of get a bit of a breakaway.
Yeah, Dickinson and Spears got a great jump early on. Simply Steve doing a great job as well, trying to hold on to that 3rd place position. We've also got, I believe, just a little bit of a good battle further down in the field. But every driver seems to sort themselves out right now. For the moment, it looks like side by side there between Just Dylan, and I believe that was Eat My Dust as well. Or
yeah, spot on.
Going at it. Almost called him Eat Me Dust as a callback to a certain James East from the past.
Yeah, when I did a few fill-in broadcasts here for J2ICS, I was uninformed of the driver nicknames that are commonplace here, but Gareth, we got a driver off track. I think that's going to be Just Dylan falling down the standings, and he is way off track here.
Ooh, yeah, that's going to cost him quite a bit, as he's going to have to wait for a lot of the field to go past. It looked like he just got a little bit loose all on his own, and going to be collected by Eat My Dust as well, as he spun around really at a very inopportune moment of the course. But I'm sure we're going to see him get his way back up, as we've still got a lot of time to go here tonight.
Yeah, a lot of opportunities for these drivers to kind of come back and remount a charge. They do have 2 fast repairs available in the back pocket, a get-out-of-jail-free card, if you will, for the fans at home. If you find yourself with a heavily damaged race car, you can go down pit road, hit the magic button, and come right back out on track with effectively a brand new race car. So drivers have 2 of those available here tonight, and with that being a 2-hour, basically mini endurance race with this crown jewel, it's more likely we're going to see all the drivers here at the end of this thing.
Yeah, I think we're going to have everyone really having a good go of it. As you can see in the back there, it looks like Just Dylan is working his way back up at the moment, right behind Garlic Dog. So he's going to be making his way up as well as Garlic Dog.
No, that's Kasuda in the number 11 machine. who had a start from pit
Oh,
road. You were telling me about that before the race. Was he one of the drivers that had a penalty coming into tonight?
I heard the only penalty was the number 2 machine, but I could be proven wrong, as it looks like that was not the case, because he's showing up as the 11 right now. So, yeah, maybe just deciding to start from even pit road could be the reason for that. Just trying to see and feel his way around this field at the moment. But we're going to keep on looking at this battle for the 3rd position right now, because we've currently got 4 cars under a blanket behind Simply Steve, with Tonlo, You Know Who, and Nick Beaver all 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and they are in a very, very heated battle for that 3rd position.
Yeah, I wonder if they're focusing on the spot right ahead of them and maybe not so worried about Dickinson and Spears out front, because those two, the race leaders, separated by about 0.7 of a second, but they're almost 2 seconds ahead of this very frantic battle for 3rd. Going to be interesting to see how this one shapes down. I see another battle developing up out on track, Gareth. That's going to be the battle for 12th. Prince Adam in the 777 has one hungry Nicolator right behind the 5, and I think I see a Sector in the 95 as well.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of closer battles than I expected. I expected this field to stretch out just a little bit earlier on, but it seems like all the drivers are pretty stuck pretty much nose to tail, and there seems to be almost no gap between the entire field, really, if you look at this point. You know, if you're allowing for a big enough gap to be over 2 seconds, you're not going to struggle. You're going to struggle to find one before the 20th position, because it looks like all drivers are pretty much nose to tail at this point.
Yeah, very impressed. Every time I'm out here in the broadcast booth here for the Just Two Idiots Cup Series, sponsored by the Designers Home Gallery, I am constantly amazed of how stacked the field is. As Dickinson very briefly set the fastest lap of the race on 128.7, immediately answered though by Spears, who clicks off a 128.63, and these guys have built up a 1.8 second advantage over 3rd place Simply Steve. Now behind Steve, still a lot of action, as it looks like You Know Who is going to pull up alongside Tonlo, backs out of it though under braking, and that may allow Beaver, our current fastest Ford out on track, maybe a chance to fight into the top 5. And now, Gareth, I've seen you race a Ford plenty of times in the past. Have you ever ran the GTE Ford before?
Yeah, I definitely have, James. I big fan of the blue ovals, and I must admit it's quite a challenging car to drive. It's a little bit unpredictable and not exactly, let's say, the most tameable either, but it does a pretty good job, especially on the straights. You can get the power down, and it handles very similar to the GT3 car. It seems to push a little bit more than the other cars around, but Nick Beaver, if anyone I know is going to be able to tame that beast, it's going to be him. So looking forward to seeing him, and he's going to take advantage right there. You Know Who got a very bad exit, I was going to say, at the end of the final corner, and it looks like Beaver's going to try something around the outside. Not sure if that's going to be ideal, but he's going to go for it anyway.
Yeah, this is where Beaver's going to try and put down that power of the Ford, but You Know Who shuts the door. Look at that. No, Beaver with a high-low maneuver steals the spot into 1. A big lockup there. Noah Who has to back out of it slightly, but Beaver's going to take over the 5th place spot. Our current fastest Ford on track, but look at that, Gareth. Tonlo in 4th has got about a 1 second breakaway, and You Know Who's not going to let him have it easy here. Looks to fight back in the battle for 5th, as I think they are brushing and grinding. You Know Who on the ragged edge here, trying to get that gap, but Beaver, very defensive, is losing even more time to the top 4.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible battling, but absolutely correct. It's going to be making them lose time and potentially, well, a lot of time towards the front of the grid, but it looks like it's been sorted out just now, as You Know Who is going to be trailing along behind Beaver in the Ford. And one of the reasons that Ford typically has a bit more power is you can see the silhouette is quite a lot lower than a lot of the other machines out on track at the moment. We're looking on board with Joe Albanese right now, and he is following behind Biker Pilot in the 16th spot.
Yeah, this is a very, I panned the camera over here, had the production guys make a switch for me. So you're watching right now Prince Adam in the 777 machine. That is a very, very busy racetrack. That is Adam in 11th, all the way back to Troy Banks in 19th. And a nice and tidy pack here starting to come out on the big straightaway, getting ready to cross the start and finish line. Now, as a racer myself, and as well for yourself, surely you can confirm with the fans, that helps you stay motivated. When you can see so many drivers right ahead of you, it gives you a bit of a carrot to chase, so to speak, and kind of helps you click off some faster laps when you know somebody's right there. And that's what's going on for Troy Banks, that 888 machine. He's battling with Book in the 056, nose to tail just ahead. I saw Ace pull out against Albanese, trying to look for a pass, but I'm very impressed how much racing we're seeing all across the circuit here.
Yeah, it's definitely, going back to your earlier statement, James, you know, it's one of those things that if you see a car out in front, it can definitely, I want to say almost, it can definitely push you to find just that little bit more, just that little bit of an edge above that car in front, as well as giving you the draft or the slipstream down the straightaway to really help you drive up to the car right in front. But at the same time, you can sometimes overcook the car into a corner thinking that you'll gain as much time as possible and then completely miss your braking point. So definitely one of those things that you have to manage just how quickly you gain on the car in front, but always nice to have that carrot to chase, as you said.
And something I learned in race school early on in my sport bike career is we were told it's a 5-mile-an-hour difference is all that it takes to trigger your brain into kind of going into uh-oh mode, where you're coming into a corner a little bit too fast. So, yeah, I mean, the draft that we're seeing, a good case in point, simply Stephen Tonlow battling for third. If you're tucked in behind the driver in front, hop out of the draft and find yourself coming into a corner just 5 miles an hour faster than you were expecting, very easy to make those mistakes. And Stephen Tonlow, not any mistakes here, as they're putting on a show wheel to wheel for about 3 corners in a row. Looks like Steve is going to lose the position. And a bit of a wobble there from that Corvette, that number 1 machine. And just like that, Beaver and you-know-who are back in the hunt.
Yeah, Simply Steve pushed it in a little bit too hard there into those double right-hand corners, trying to get underneath Tonlow once losing the spot. And that was never really going to work. The Corvette was not going to like that move, and certainly did not, which is why he got a little bit loose there. And Beaver and you-know-who just trailing behind found a way to use that to their advantage and catch up to the rear bumper. So now they're back in that 4-car battle that we saw earlier on, once again repeating itself.
Now we've got another off-track reported. It was Garlic Dog very briefly. He was able to get back onto the circuit, so thankfully no incident there. And Gareth, as this race progresses, I'm also curious to see, when is attrition going to play a factor? I mean, Tonlow, Simply Steve, Beaver, you-know-who, they really haven't had any breaks here in the action. After a while, that's going to have to wear on these drivers, and we've seen it before with endurance racing. And granted, this is only, quote-unquote, only a 2-hour race, but no driver swap, so these guys are going to be out here for the limit. Eventually, surely they're going to be tired after a point and start making mistakes.
Yeah, I'm especially worried looking at how Simply Steve is driving right now. He's very, very aggressive on the defending side of things, and I'm just wondering if he spends so much time under pressure and looking in those mirrors and really worried about the driver behind, he may lose focus as much just in front. So that could cause him a little bit more drama, and a little bit, as you said, 5 miles an hour is all you need to make a bit of a difference in your brain. So look, it's one of those things that any driver can really be feeling the pressure and feeling the heat, maybe make a few mistakes, but I am definitely watching Simply Steve, as it looks like he's got a little bit more of a breakaway to Beaver behind now. So hopefully he can get dialed in, take a deep breath, and keep chugging along.
Yeah, I've seen Simply Steve race all sorts of different machines in the past. LMPs, I've seen him in super formulas. The guy is quick, and I'm always impressed of how rapidly some of these drivers can switch gears, all pun intended, between different cars. I mean, hopping between a GTE tonight, some of these guys race super formulas on Thursday nights. That's got to be extremely tough to go from a GT class car to an open wheel, where the driving style is just totally different. The reference points, everything about the machines is just so vastly way off mark from each other, and that's got to be a tough way to overadapt. And Nick Beaver, that number 10 Ford, he's also one of those drivers I've seen do that multiple times, and he is staying right there with Tonlo and Simply Steve. He's up 2 spots so far here tonight. And I've got to say, a beautifully painted Ford as well. It's good to see that machine out on track.
Yeah, well, as I said before, James, definitely a Blue Oval racer that you've got in the booth with you as well, and definitely love the look of the 2017 Ford GTE machine. But yeah, it's looking pretty good out there. It's certainly something different, certainly nice to see, and like you said, the paint scheme looking quite nice. But that being said, Simply Steve in front, definitely a different paint scheme than we're used to seeing on the Corvette as well, and just pretty much everyone out here having a nice looking rig, and it seems to be working out pretty well, as you can spot them quite easily from the booth.
Yeah, these guys are always very easy to spot, and Dickinson has pulled a 3-second gap over the rest of the field. Started in pole, holding on to pole, and coming into tonight, Dickinson was also our points leader. He's about 11 points up over, I believe that's going to be Tonlo. Let me check my notes here. And Hans. Yes, 11 points ahead of Tonlo, who's currently 3rd on track, and he's about 13 points up over Nick Beaver, who is 5th on track. So Dickinson looking to extend that points lead here today and see if he can capitalize. We have another race, starting to develop. Nicolator, who's up 3 spots, putting the pressure on Prince Adam. And I'm starting to see those off tracks light up a little bit here, Gareth. And correct me if I'm wrong, after 20 incident points, these drivers will start receiving penalties.
Yeah, absolutely. So 20 incidents will get you a drive-through penalty, and every 8 incidents after. So not a whole lot of room to really push these cars to their absolute limit. You'll see also a lot of the 1Xs for off-tracks being shown to you in the booth as well, James, as well as I. A lot of those are going to be coming out of turn number 4. The runoff through turn number 4 is very, very tight, and it does not allow the cars to push out wide when they really want to. So you'll see a lot of 1Xs happen there, as we're currently watching Tonlo, Simply Steve, and Nick Beaver once again having their battle as they make their way through turn number 1.
Yeah, these guys, I mean, we're only 15 minutes into this 2-hour main event, but they are putting on a show early on. And good to see, Gareth. We've got Nick Terrell joining us from the spectator area as well. He's got a late night at work, but enjoying some J2ICS action. Another great racer in his own right. We've both had lots of experience on and off the track with, and glad he's able to come out and see some good racing, as it looks like we've got another off track. And what a unique line choice from Book in the 056 Corvette.
Yeah, that's not the first time we've seen Book just in the corner of our screen, just having a little bit of too much entry speed into turn 1 and locking up those tires. So definitely something interesting as Troy Banks goes for the move on the inside. Book goes well wide off the track, has to go through the grass, but does a great job of somehow staying in front. Definitely going to earn himself another 1X though for an off track. So something that he will need to keep under wraps for the remainder of the race. It looks like there was a little bit of contact there, as Troy Banks says, come on, get a move on.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Banks almost getting in the back of Book there. And I'm surprised that Book didn't get a slowdown, and looks like Albanese. Oh, where did
Book had another incident there?
Yeah,
Yes,
I didn't
just
catch
got out of
that.
the corner a little bit. Yeah, just lost the rear end. A little bit too much power too quickly. Is still on full left lock, so car just spun around a little bit. Oh, sorry, right lock, and yeah, Banks took advantage, finally able to get through. I'm sure he's very happy to see that, as Book's going to have to not only try and make his way back up to Banks, but also fend off Albanese and Biker Pilot just behind.
Yeah, the two teammates right behind within 3/10. Book takes a look to the inside line and one, backs out of it, but now he's got his focus diverted. He's got Banks by a half second ahead. He wants to track back down, but any mistake here, and we're going to see Albanese and Pilot make a move rather quickly. And Gareth, we did have a driver take a tow back to pit road already here tonight. It's going to be Matthew Kasuda, the number 11 machine. Not sure what happened there.
Oh, it looks like he was crabbing. So
yeah,
from what I could see there, it looked like the left front was actually pushed in. and his wheels were not able to turn the way you would expect a wheel to respond to the steering wheel input. So just seemed like that wasn't the go, as we're on board with Joe Albanese right now inside the BMW M8 GTE, and you can see that it is not exactly the most luxurious inside of a race car, but I guess saving weight is probably the most important thing, even more than power, some would say, when it comes to racecraft.
Yeah, and I was impressed with how much wheel Albanese was having to give that Beamer in the O2 machine. Seemed like he was really fighting the car there, but Gareth, we're going to go back up third. Tonlo, Simply Steve, and Bieber have closed the gap slightly to Joshua Spears. They're now within 2 seconds and closing just a little bit of that second place driver, the number 84 machine. Tonlo is up 1 spot, Steve down 2, Bieber up 2 spots. So I'm curious to see, are these guys going to push hard early on? I mean, it looks like they've been pushing non-stop, but surely I'm thinking, oh, something's going on.
Contact. Nick Beaver ran right into the back of Simply Steve, just a little bit too close for comfort under brakes. And unfortunately, they got together as further back.
It's a biker pilot, Albanese.
Yep. And,
oh, don't tell me the two teammates crashed into each other. The two teammates crashed into each other.
That is exactly what happened, as it looked like Book slowed down. One of the teammates in front had his own issues, and then the Beamers were just dominoes, basically, at that point.
One more time for the fans at home. We don't get to see synchronized crashing very often. We're focused in on Biker Pilot, who I believe is the second car, and yeah, his teammate just got loose, spins them around, and they both get to talk to their team owner after that one. And I would imagine there's probably going to be words in the team garage, Gareth. You never want to see one of your drivers crash, much less two of them, as there is Matthew Kasuda getting back out on track.
Much less into each other, I would say.
Yeah, fair enough.
The biggest thing, certainly a paddock that I am very interested to stay away from once this race is said and done. But, you know, we're currently watching Beaver, and he is continuing to go around with you-know-who, applying pressure consistently, as Beaver's trying to catch back up to Simply Steve, who has now fallen back from Tonlo after their own incident, heading into this same corner just a lap ago.
Yeah, those are those little moments you and I were talking about that's going to separate or bring this field together. It doesn't take much in a long format race to find yourself on the outside looking in. Now, it looks like Beaver and you-know-who's starting to close that gap slightly to Simply Steve. And I've got another off-track reported, Matthew Kasuda and the number 11 machine. It kind of looks like he's contemplating his life choices there, Gareth.
It just seems like this race is certainly not going his way, for lack of a better term, as he just can't seem to get that Corvette dialed in for him. And you're right, he's just sitting there, he's just chilling out, you know, having a bit of a picnic, I think, and well, we'll see if the recovery car can grab him pretty soon. But there we go, there's another battle right here. Nicolator and Prince Adam side by side into turn 1, the best passing zone on the circuit, and it looks like Nicolator's going to make that one stick. Yeah,
very clean there from that number 5 Ferrari, and I believe, yes, he is our lone Ferrari out on track in that number 5 machine. That is his 4th position gain so far here tonight. We did get a report that Kasuda did get back out on track after 48 seconds in the grass here at Interlagos. And man, Adam and Nicolator, not a lot of room between the two, as Adam fires back, taking back over the 11th place spot. I don't know if these guys know they have almost an hour and a half left to go, and that's allowing Sector to close the door of the 95 Corvette.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about this as well, James, is that if you're Nicolator, you've got to try your best to not let your frustrations take over, as he will be very annoyed, let's say, or upset in that race car right now, thinking, I just passed Prince Adam and now I'm stuck behind him again. And that can sometimes really rile you up and force you into some mistakes. So he's just going to have to be calm and collected behind that 111 machine and keep it together and try another pass in a couple of laps.
Yeah, and speaking of that, you said a couple laps. Some of the fans at home don't realize it can take quite a while to build up the momentum to try and make a move once more, especially when you're so equally paced as most of these drivers. Now, Nicolator not going to wait. Looks to the outside line in one. That would set him up for the right-hander. Can he make it stick here? Side by side, charging down the hill. And oh, was there contact there as Adam goes off track?
That is probably the only corner on track, I would say, where you really do not want to be too wide heading into turn 2. One of the drivers has to give, and it looks like neither one wanted to, which possibly resulted in some contact. Maybe netcode helped out. We're not super certain, as Nicolator has to hold on in front of Sector and does for the moment. Bob Nova also showing his nose into the picture.
Yeah, we've got a replay queued up of that turn 1 incident. And it looks like we can grab it as Nicolator, Sector, and Bob Nova stretch their gap between themselves just a little bit. So we're focused on Nicolator on the outside.
That's the wrong.
That's the wrong
little bit earlier
replay.
than that.
Enhance. There we go. Oh,
yeah,
we call that netcode?
Netcode was a massive help there, as there was still quite a lot of gap between the two drivers as far as my eye could see. And certainly myself, no stranger to noticing when netcode happens, as being in the land down under, quite a lot of it happens as whenever I'm out on track. But
yeah, that's the joys and the follies of sim racing for the uninitiated at home watching their friends and family drive, maybe for the first time. First of all, welcome. And when we're talking about netcode up here in the booth, sometimes this sim doesn't get it just quite right. It'll predict that your car is someplace where it's not, and you'll see basically invisible contact between two drivers. And I think that's what we saw there with Prince Adam coming out on the worst end of it, just getting shoved off track by effectively a car that was not really touching him yet. So iRacing, I would say, gets it right most of the time, but sometimes you kind of fall folly to the internet gods, if you will.
yeah, it's a very hard one, and that's often the reason why we say, you know, netcode is to blame for a lot of issues in iRacing, but it's very hard for them to get right, as well as it's one of those things that, you know, you're dealing with people from all over the world all racing together, and they're racing side by side with only a small margin of error. And like you said, you know, it has to shoot from one person's sim rig to the server to the other person's sim rig and then back, and it's trying to predict where every car is on track for everyone. And for some people it shows them as being right next to each other, and some people there's a bit of a gap there. So it does its best, but unfortunately not always the most accurate.
Now, thankfully, it looks like the drivers we have out on track consisting just about entirely of Canadians and Americans, as we pull up on the live timing board on the left side of your screen. Currently, USA holding the top 6 spots. Notivin and Captain CK are two fastest Canadians out on track. They're running 7th and 8th on this circuit. And we're watching two more Americans, Simply Steve and Nick Beaver, still having a battle for 4th. This has been going on the opening 18 laps here tonight. And these guys just not yielding at all. They are putting on a show for the fans and have been linked up nose to tail for the duration so far this main event.
Yeah, I've been incredibly impressed with Simply Steve, especially being able to hold off Nick Beaver for as long as he has. We know how quick Nick Beaver is, and myself personally, I would know that, or at least I'd like to think that I know that it's much easier being the car behind, because you just got to follow that car in front of you, whereas being Simply Steve, you got to look in your mirrors pretty much every time you're about to head into a corner, making sure there's no dive bomb coming from the car behind. And Simply Steve going to put the block on, I'm sure, as much as possible, not wanting Beaver to run down the inside. And you can see there, trying to use up as much track as possible and make sure that Beaver stays behind. We've got Nicolator with potentially an incident as he fell down a couple of spots. What happened there?
Let's get that one queued up. It was a big off track for that number 5 machine. Does he get a little bit of help? Is it going to be solo? It looks like it's going to be solo. Locks up the brakes, pushes very, very wide. Yeah, losing 2 spots there. 1 to Sector. I think just 1 to Sector, so not too bad of a folly there for Nicolator, but sector. That's going to be his 6th spot gain in the 95 machine. And moving on up. Now, Troy Banks takes a tow back to pit road. That's going to be a huge crash for the 888 Corvette. Looks like, is this going to be into turn 1?
Oh,
Does
he's
he
just
pull over?
pulled over. I almost wonder, so some of these drivers will run with VR headsets, which basically means it's virtual reality. You know, you have a headset on and it shows you the screen right in front of your eyes. And we have heard recently of a few issues in regards to VR headsets where they will just all of a sudden go black. The screen will just turn off completely and you have no idea where you are or what you're doing. And I almost wonder if that could be a case or some other hardware malfunction that has made him pull off there and unfortunately seemingly ended his race early.
Yeah, hopefully he can get back out there. Still plenty of time, but Gareth, we have hit the fuel window. We've got drivers down pit road. Dickinson, Joshua Spears, you know who, are coming down. It also looks like Eat My Dust is going to join. Tonlo, Simply Steve, and Nick Beaver opt to stay out a little while longer here. So Tonlo looks like he's going to get credit for a lap led as more drivers down pit road. Urko, Bob Nova, Prince Adam, Nicolator, Ace 22, a large portion of the field starting to hit their pit stops right around that 27.5 to 28 minute time. So I was hoping for my own sake, it was going to be right at the 30-minute board, we were going to see those pit stops. That'd be way easy for me to track up in the booth, but no such luck here for the commentators.
Yeah, unfortunately not the case, but interestingly enough, neither Simply Steve or Nick Beaver came down pit road to break up that battle, so I'm almost wondering if they're going to follow each other into pit road and follow each other out again, if this battle will continue to go the way it is, or one of these drivers will decide to pull out early. If I was Nick Beaver, I'd almost be thinking about pitting a slightly different lap to Simply Steve and maybe being able to get around on pit stops, but we're going to see as they make their way past pit entry in just a moment, and we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, they're going to follow each other down. Tonlo, Steve, Nick Beaver all down pit road. What about Notaven and Captain CK? Looks like they're coming down pit road. Gareth, what a fast entry onto pit road there. They're hard on the brakes. It looked like CK was about to absolutely destroy the back of that 128 machine. And there goes Dickinson, the number 64. He's going to take back over the top spot, I believe. Now, Dickinson was in his pit stall 17.5 seconds. Let's see, is anybody faster? Looks like it's going to be pretty identical pit times here. So not too many moves being made on pit road, it looks like.
Yeah, not at all. The only thing I'm worried about is Simply Steve came in quite hot, and you actually saw, just for a brief moment, as we did have the camera pan to him at the time, actually locked up those fronts trying to get that Corvette stopped in time before the pit speed limit was in effect. So hopefully no penalty to be given out to him, as I don't believe so, but always something to keep an eye on, making sure that you get down pit road speed quick enough, as Prince Adam and Nicolator look like they're quite close together on track for the 12th spot.
Yeah, the 777 BMW of Prince Adam, the number 5 of Nicolator's Ferrari, are right there nose to tail. That time was within 0.2 of a second there. Looks like Prince Adam might be able to extend that gap slightly. He's got about 0.4 to his name, and they're kind of slightly in no man's land. You can see Bob Nova, the 605 Ford, about a second ahead of these two. And I've seen it before in long draft-heavy tracks that drivers will try and work together for a few laps and maybe leapfrog up to a position ahead of them. Haven't seen much of that tonight here at Interlagos, though. It seems like it's been every man for himself, and everybody kind of battling for their own spots everywhere you look. And I don't know if that's slowing the pace down for these drivers, or maybe that's going right according to plan what they were looking for.
Yeah, not entirely sure, as it looks like a lot of the field is quite stretched out at the moment. I would say Pitbag and crew were quite close for the 19th spot for a little bit there, but it looks like right now that's sorted itself out, as Nick Beaver and Simply Steve are going to start their ongoing battle once again. But James, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on what's your manufacturer preference out here tonight? We've only got one Ferrari, which is absolutely staggering to me, as I would have thought that's one of the cars of choice, especially over the Ford we know is certainly my pick here tonight. And I know we've seen the Porsches performing incredibly well up front with Scott Dickinson, but just curious what your manufacturer preference or who you're really rooting for out there, James.
With my limited time driving on iRacing, I am definitely a broadcaster first and an iRacer second. I've got a bunch of experience in the BMW GTE, and I enjoyed it for the most part. I've got a fair amount in the Porsche. I have not ever driven the Corvette, or I believe the Ford in GTE. I've driven the GT3 Ford. So I'd say, honestly, from what I'm comfortable with, I would have to be cheering for Nicolator, that number 5, the lone Ferrari out on track. Seems to be a car that kind of meshes well with my driving style. And that's the thing as well for the fans at home. On paper, some cars are better than others. Most people on the iRacing service are not at the talent pool to be able to fully extend and use all those cars' benefits. So it definitely comes down, in my opinion, so hopefully I don't get obliterated by the fans out there today, but in my opinion, it's whatever car fits your driving style the best is what's going to be the fastest.
Yeah, you know what? I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's exactly, I think you hit the nail on the head there, so to speak, as that's pretty much exactly how I would describe it as well, although I wouldn't have found such an elegant way to say it. So you've done a much better job than I would have in that regard, James. But at the moment, Nodovan with Captain CK, again with a Corvette and Ford GTE battle, is going on right there for the 7th place position, as well as the Beaver Simply Steve battle continuing. We've got Nicolator with Prince Adam as well in the 11th position still. Just Dylan, Biker Pilot, and Book as well, all pretty close together, as well as Garlic Dog and Joe Albanese. So about 4 or 5 really solid battles out on track still.
Yeah, wherever you look, there's somebody to race here at J2ICS. A lot of good friends, and if you're looking to join the action as well, we do have their website linked on the broadcast description, so you too can get on the action. They run endurance and a sprint series alternating every other Wednesday. Free to join. A lot of great guys on and off the track. One of the groups that I would absolutely hang out with before and after the races. And just a good band of misfits here at J2ICS. And a lot of fun whenever these guys get together and put on a show. And as you're seeing out on track, everywhere you look, there's battles going on. I mean, if we pan back, it's a 3-car battle for 15th, but it's mostly 16th. Book in the 056 and Just Dylan and the number 21 Beamer are going to be linked up nose to tail in turn 1, and that's the battle for 16th. We are a little over a quarter of the way through this main event, and still, I mean, we've got about 4 or 5 distinct battles going on out on track.
Yeah, it's really great racing, and you know, that's another thing. Usually you expect that the pit stops are going to make these drivers really separate their battles, and the pit crews can certainly have an impact into where these drivers run, but thankfully the drivers have kept very close together, still in a lot of tight battles as we go back to Nodovan and Captain CK in their battle for the 7th position, which seems to be one of the closest on track right now, but it's really looking quite good. And you know, one thing we haven't mentioned is Tonlo came out in the 2nd position with Simply Steve and Nick Beaver in 3rd and 4th. So Joshua Spears, who was in 2nd before that pit stop cycle, has dropped back to the 6th spot now, James.
Yeah, Spears was about 5 seconds slower on pit road, a 22.2 second pit stop. Everybody in the top 3 was around a 17.5 to an 18 second pit stop. Not quite sure what happened to Spears. I didn't see that number 84 Porsche involved in any incidents that kind of jumped out that would sustain any damage, but I don't know what he was changing. Maybe changing pressures, maybe changing something with the setup. What would you change on pit road in these GTEs, Gareth?
Well, it almost makes me wonder. I'm thinking time-wise that he's actually decided to change his tires early, and that's the only explanation I can really think of, as we did have a fuel-limited run here in these GTEs, about half capacity. I believe 48% fuel is what the allowance is, excuse me, for the drivers in their fuel cell for this race. So Spears may have decided to get all 4 tires on that machine, and unfortunately that's going to take a lot longer than just half a fuel load. So I'm going to assume that that's probably is what cost him here.
Yeah, I mean, it's too fast of a pit stop to be some sort of penalty that I would think. So it's either, as you said, damage or tires. I mean, most drivers I would suspect are going to double stint tires. I would have expected, but maybe Joshua Spears is putting himself in an alternative strategy for late in the race with about that 5-second difference. Now, I don't know. I mean, if Tonlo, Simply Steve, and Beaver take tires, let's assume it's a 22-second pit stop for them next time they come in around that hour mark or shortly before, that would put Spears about 2-3 seconds ahead of them. But what about Dickinson up front, 17.5 seconds? I don't know if he can be touched unless Dickinson in that 64 has some sort of major problem at some point in the race.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Dickinson just seems like in a class of his own for the moment as Paper Bag finds his way off the circuit and has to get his way back on track, and does so without getting involved in anything. So we'll have a look at what happened there. And ooh, just sending it into the corner a little bit too deep. And unfortunately sending it a little bit too wide on exit, and he's going to have crew right on the tail end. That Corvette looking nice and blue, and it is going to be all that Paper Bag can see in his rearview mirror.
Yeah, I mean, I keep going back up to this battle for a second because it's so incredibly tight between Simply Steve and Nick Beaver. Now, Beaver was almost 1.1 seconds slower on his lap 20 pit stop than Simply Steve. And we've got Penny Dickinson kind of giving us a little insight as well. Top 6, very similar to the last race finish, where it was Dickinson, Tonlo, Beaver, Josh, and Noah. And she's spot on the money here. It's interesting to see that it's very often the same drivers, the same group of hooligans are up here at the end of this thing. And Beaver is trying everything he can against his longtime friend and rival, Simply Steve, trying to pull up alongside the Corvette, looks to the outside, cuts back in, and Beaver has to get on the binder. Simply Steve chops the nose of the Ford, but oh, here we go, Garrett. There's contact between the two.
Yeah, there was contact a couple times there as these drivers are trying everything. Simply Steve is absolutely a monster when it comes to defending his line and his position on track, and Nick Beaver not wanting to get into him at all. And he's going to have to relent that spot to Simply Steve, and somehow Steve keeps the car behind him of Nick Beaver, but it makes me wonder into turn 1. You could see right there, it looks like Beaver got a bit better of a run using that draft from behind Simply Steve. And we're going to see into turn 1 whether there's a bit of a dive bomb from Nick Beaver behind, as he's going to be running out of patience as he continues to follow Simply Steve around, but stays in the draft right now and is going to follow him through turns 1, 2, and 3. And I wonder if a dive bomb is coming into turn 4, the ever troublesome turn, especially for Simply Steve just ahead. We've seen him run wide there a little bit already, and if he's pushed onto the outside, we could see him run very wide once again, as Nick Beaver's going to stay behind a little bit longer now, though. These drivers absolutely on the ragged edge of grip right now, James.
Yeah, this is the same story we saw very early on in the race as well, the opening 20-30 minutes. Simply Steve and Beaver started battling, and just like before, Tonlo extends that gap, now 1.9 seconds up over this battle for third, and something has happened to Prince Adam. A huge moment there for Adam, losing a spot to Sector for P12. Let's see, get that focused on Adam. Oh, a huge moment. Man, Sector was very lucky to not get tangled up in that one.
Yeah, there's a couple troublesome corners, it must be said, on this circuit here at Interlagos, and turn 2 is certainly one of them, as you get that line a little bit wrong and it could be the end of it. As looky here, Nick Beaver right on the coattail, there's about as close as you can get, makes the run to the inside. Steve not giving him as much room as he probably wants. Beaver's going to make that past the inside line, take it away, and try desperately to hold onto it, as Simply Steve is going to have the run heading into turn 4.
Yeah, Beaver does a good job there, keeping about a quarter of a second gap over Steve, not letting that Corvette get too much momentum built up. But here we go, Steve kind of putting his nose in there and saying, all right, you can chop across the front if you want, but you're going to spin yourself off the nose. And side by side once more, Beaver and Steve side by side in the battle for third. Beaver shows ahead by about a tenth, defends the line, the number 10. And I don't think these guys know they have an hour and 15 minutes left to go. They're battling like it's the last lap and battling like as if it's for the lead. And my goodness, I don't think my heart can take it.
Yeah, well, we're up here in the booth. I imagine in the car they are going absolutely berserk, as the heart rate monitor on those guys, I'm sure, would be skyrocketing right now. But you can see as we pan back the camera, just Dylan, I believe, made a pass on Book just behind and is now trying to get up to Ace just in front for the 15th position.
Yeah, Dylan's had a bit of a rough go here today. Qualified 8th, currently running 16th out on track in that Beamer, so he's down 8 positions. Trying to remount a charge here. He's got H22, that number 2 Porsche right in front, and unfortunately we've got another crash report. Uh-oh.
Oh, that's going to be on pit exit. So pit exit especially difficult here at Interlagos. There's a very, very tight left-hander. You can see right on the exit, it looked like Crew just misjudged the speed and went straight into the barricade there on the outside. So that I guess getting a little bit overexcited to get out of pit road and back onto the racing surface. And that left-hand corner, that really tight left-hander, really took him by surprise.
So we have whittled it down to 22 of the 24 entries still out on track. Matthew Kasuda took another tow back to pit road on his 23rd lap. Troy Banks, the number 888 machine, has retired at 17 laps into this main event. Now, to give Crew his credit in that 737, that beautifully painted baby blue Corvette, still out on track, so hopefully he didn't sustain too much damage. We'll keep an eye out to see if he comes back down pit road next lap by, but you know what? I take it back. It's 23 drivers out on track. Kasuda is going to return to the racing surface here.
You love to see it. You love to see when a driver really battles through a lot of adversity that they've had throughout their race and comes back out and still gives it a go, as long as he doesn't get involved in any incidents with any of the leaders. Just churning laps, having a great time and enjoying the limelight out there on circuit is really all you can ask for from a driver who is unfortunately having a very rough time of it. But interestingly enough, Simply Steve has not allowed Nick Beaver to get past. I thought once Nick Beaver was gone and he had the clean air, he might have been able to build a bit of a gap to Simply Steve behind, but proving not to be the case right now.
Yeah, it's almost if I had to make an educated guess here, I think Beaver and Simply Steve have been kind of measuring each other up. I mean, we've seen some fierce battling, but we've also seen them spend a whole lot of laps in front or behind of each other, and that gives both of these guys ample opportunity to see what the other driver's doing, maybe see what their line choices are, maybe their brake marks, and they can start squeezing a little bit more time out of these race machines. And I mean, that's a great onboard with Simply Steve's number 1 machine right in tow there behind Beaver, using the line for that number 10 machine, closing that gap within 0.3 of a second, down to almost a quarter of a second in certain spots. But a little bit of bobble there from Steve, and we said it early on, 5 miles an hour is all it takes, and a little mistake costing Simply Steve about 0.3 on the live timing board.
Yeah, and what you saw there is textbook GTEs as well. You know, a lot of these drivers, sometimes when you get into these GTE machines, they can feel almost the same as their GT3 counterparts, but they are absolutely very different. A lot of different characteristics, but one of the most vivid and well-known ones is that they do have a lack of ABS, the anti-lock braking system, to help these cars really slow down. And it looked like right there, Simply Steve just got on the brakes a little bit too hard, and they just started to lock up as he let go, which is what caused the front end to do the back end to do a little bit of a wiggle. It was trying to change directions as the front end locked up and the rear was trying to go around for a spin. Able to keep it underneath him though, and doing a great job of still sticking quite closely behind Nick Beaver for the moment.
Yeah, and these drivers, that is a compounding issue if you find yourself locking up the brakes here in the GTEs. Not only are you losing time in that particular corner, in the case of Simply Steve, we saw him very quickly lose 3/10, but you're also kind of prematurely wearing out these tires, and it's more of a battle of heat than it is against wear for these guys out on track. If you put too much heat in the tires, then suddenly you find yourself without a whole lot of traction, and it gets worse and worse and worse. You lose traction. You start to slide around a little bit more. The heat builds up even further, and then it just gets to be a whole lot of not fun as the run progresses. And that's maybe why we saw some drivers we think take tires early on in that first round of pit stops. Maybe those guys are trying to use a little bit more rubber, kind of giving it up on pit road by those 4 or 5 seconds for an extended pit stop, but then being able to go out and hammer down a little bit harder on the car. And Gareth, I'm super interested as we're going to be opening up the next fuel window in around 7 minutes, I would say. I'm interested to see what those pit lane times are going to be, and maybe see if we have drivers spending more time on pit road compared to what we saw in the past.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting that a lot of the drivers will change over, except for maybe Joshua Spears, potentially doing something different. As we do see right now, you can see the time spent down pit lane, or actually in the pit box I should say, and 22.1 seconds as opposed to a 17.8 second time period across the board. So something definitely that we're going to keep an eye on, and I almost wonder if that's a strategy call, because like you were saying just before, we're now seeing it almost looks like there is a lot of cloud cover over the track at the moment, and I wonder if our track temperatures have come down just a bit, which is allowing the tires not to wear as much as just Dylan goes for a little bit of a ride out wide. But Simply Steve right on the back bumper of Beaver once again, and Captain CK on the back bumper of Nodovan as well. So these drivers continuing to have battles regardless of tyre wear, it almost seems. But like I was trying to allude to just before, Joshua Spears may choose to save those tyres this time by, as the track temps might be a bit cooler, and it looks like they are right there, 68 degrees, as we started with 73.
Well, I think air temp's about the same, but the track's definitely cooled off. It's a 71 track temp. So we're losing a couple degrees.
Wrong temp.
Yeah, no worries, as they
James.
say in the land down under. As I'm getting distracted there, CK and Nodovan having a bit of a battle for 7th. CK briefly taking over the spot. Not sure how long it's going to last for, as that 128 fires right back on the inside line. And so, I'm sorry, I distracted myself. Penny Dickinson made a comment, Josh may have a different strategy. That's what we're both kind of, I think, agreeing on up in the booth. I'm interested to see, let's pan the camera over there to Spears in that 84. I'm interested to see what his next pit stop time is going to be. If it's closer to that 17, 18 second pit stop, we would assume it's a fuel-only stint, but I'm not 100% sold, Gareth. I don't know for certain if a 22-second pit stop includes tires, or maybe he just has some sort of problem or some sort of damage on pit road. I wish I could put a bug in his ear and kind of find that out, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely missed it up here in the booth. It's one of those things that, you're right though, it does sound like, now that I think about it, it does sound like the tires may have taken a little bit longer than what his pit stop actually did, so not too sure what happened there. I only say tires because that's the most logical option in my head, as he was sitting in the second position for a long time without any battling going on, but he could have scraped a wall here and there that we missed out on up here in the booth, so potentially some damage getting checked out, as Nodovan and Captain CK continuing their battle, and just in front of them that's going to be Crew.
Yeah, looks like things are getting a little bit more heated in the battle for 7th. Nodovan up 2 spots, Captain CK is down 2, And yeah, there's crew in the 737, the baby blue Corvette,
Ooh.
about to go a lap down as things are getting dicey here.
Yeah, Captain CK just missed his braking point and really had to slow it down quick not to get in the back of Nodovan. And yeah, crew's going to be right there. The lap down machine potentially staying out of the way, doing a great job, not impacting this battle too much as they're still nose to tail heading out of that final corner.
Yeah, drivers that are going to lap down will see a blue flag displayed either across their dash or in the corner of the screen, letting them know basically there's a race going on and they're not currently a part of that individual portion of it, and allows them to hop out of the way for the lead lap drivers, especially in the case of Nodovan and CK. When these two drivers are battling for position, I think everybody who's going to lap down knows, like, hey, things are about to get a little bit dicey here. Might want to help facilitate that pass if I can. Otherwise, I could get squeezed into a situation I do not want to be a part of. And Captain CK, Nodovan are 100% that situation, separated by about 0.2 of a second and trying to wear each other out on braking. Each one looking for a little bit of weakness from the other, and they're so extremely close on pace. It's got to be very difficult for this Ford and Mustang battle to kind of sort itself out and either driver to get a clean breakaway.
Oh, it's Ford and Corvette battle, James, but we'll forgive you with that one. As we
Wait, what'd I say?
No, but you said Ford and Mustang.
Not even close.
The Mustang is also a Ford, but hey, you know, we're
It's my first day here.
Let's go with that. As James East collects himself, we'll go back a little bit further, back to Ace and Just Dylan, also having their own battle for the 15th position. Now, Just Dylan, like we said earlier in the show, not having the race he was looking for, but he is making his way back up through the field slowly but surely, and on the back of Ace for the moment. So we've got BMW versus Porsche and Corvette versus Ford. So the only one we're missing is the lone Ferrari out on track, currently not involved in a battle of manufacturers right now.
And speaking of not involved in a battle, let's talk about Dickinson. Up 9 1/4 of a second over Tonlo in that 04 machine. Up 11 seconds up over Beaver. Dickinson is absolutely screaming in that Porsche, the number 64 machine. Last time by a 1:29.37, so he is still gaining time on everybody else in the top three, but he does have a little bit of lap traffic on the horizon. That's going to be Biker Pilot's number 42 machine. If these drivers don't box soon, which again, that we are squarely in that second fuel window, Dickinson might be putting some drivers down a lap here rather quickly.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that, you know, you're always, it always makes you realize just how fast a driver must be and just how well they must be gelling with their machine that is underneath them, as Dickinson has put a lot of time into drivers behind him, and make no mistake about it, a lot of these drivers out here tonight, I dare say all of them, are very good at what they do, and you know, that's the whole reason why we're here today. And Dickinson just proving that he's an absolute masterclass in his own right.
And Gareth,
his way around the circuit.
Sorry to interrupt you there. I don't know if you were able to hear that onboard audio from Dickinson at 64. He is doing a lot of fuel saving into the corners right now. I heard it in turn 1, and I left it on the onboard for that mid-track there to get another peek of it, or I don't know what the audio version of a peek is, a tiny listen, I guess. But Dickinson, and you see it reflected on the live timing, losing time to Tonlo. Dickinson's looking for fuel numbers here. He is very lifting very early in the Porsche. He's already bled off about a second to second place driver Tonlo. I'm wondering, surely he's not put himself in a situation where he's going to be that short on fuel, but I would not be surprised to see that 64 come down pit road this time by.
Yeah, I wonder if he's saving to make it to the end or trying to save for an extra lap. He did pit a lap before Nick Beaver and Simply Steve and Tonlo in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th position, so potentially just wanting to make that extra lap as he does stay out for now. So maybe trying to get on the same strategy as the drivers behind, just to absolutely assure himself that they won't come by on pit strategy.
Now, the anticipated fuel window tonight was 25 to 30 minutes at a time, and Joshua Spears is going to be the first driver for this stint down pit road. Let's keep an eye out on his pit lane, pit stall time. There we go. I'm going to get it eventually, ladies and gentlemen. He was 22.2 seconds in his stall last time by. He is in the pits now. We're looking for about a 17.5 second is what we think a fuel-only stop has been for these drivers. So now it's Dickinson, Tonlo, Beaver, your top three. We're waiting to see what Spears does on pit road. And Gareth, it's going to be another longer stop. He's at 21 seconds and counting so far. Oh, it's a long stop, Gareth.
Yeah, okay, so that makes me wonder if he's taking tires now, and if that's the case. But that's an interesting one, because he was the one that was down for the longest amount of time last time by. So
yeah, it was 22 seconds compared to everybody else's 17.5, 18 seconds. That Porsche
yeah, it looks
is
like
jacked
he's
up in the air.
Yeah, I was
45
about to say
seconds.
That, so. Yeah, well then there's definitely a four tire stop there, so that is very interesting. As
yeah, Spears might have just had a rough pit stop, and here we go. Dickinson's down pit road. Let's see if that number 64 machine goes all the way up in the air.
And remember, Dickinson did come in at the same time, the first time by, as Joshua Spears, so I believe that fuel saving, just making sure he can save an extra lap to make it to this particular fuel window.
So let's see, does that 64 go up in the air? Now, Gareth, in these GTEs, no. can you also get fuel done while the car's in the air getting tires? But Dickinson, no, is going to double stint the tires here, 18 seconds in and out of his pit stall.
Now that's an interesting strategy, not one that I would recommend, but he's going to try it anyway, and I guess we're going to have to see how it goes for him. Now he will gain a ton of spots, or a ton of position, a ton of time, as I'm also having my own problems up here in the booth, but he will gain a bunch of time on the rest of the field if no one else is able to stint their tires another time. But yeah, they must be wearing pretty thin at this point, I'd imagine. But yeah, as regards to your question from earlier, I honestly can't say for certain. It's been a while, I must admit, since I've last driven a GTE, especially to the full fuel window extent of things. But I believe that you have to fuel the car before you can put tires in. I'm not sure if they take them at the exact same time, so that's definitely going to impact in that. As Tonlo comes down, Nick Beaver behind, and I believe Simply Steve actually stayed out there.
Yeah, Steve going for something a little bit different. Now, Gareth, the drivers are being displayed the cross green and white flags, signaling the halfway mark of today's main event. So once this pit cycle is complete, I'm very interested to kind of measure up all the drivers' pit road times, as well as look at and see what some drivers are doing as far as lap times. Dickinson double stinting the tires here. I'm going to wait for his next flying lap, as the lap prior was his out lap, and kind of see what it compares to the rest of the field. Now, Simply Steve last time by a little over a second off of his fastest lap of the race on 1:30.11, so hasn't lost too much time here on what we are fairly certain at this point, his original set of tires. And Gareth, I'm not seeing anybody else, maybe Urko back in 15th and Prince Adam in 17th. So there's about a handful of drivers, I think. Joshua Spears, Urko, Prince Adam, and Biker Pilot Joe Albany's crew all on fresh tires. But for the most part, a lot of drivers on this pit cycle look to be double stinting their tires underneath them.
So certainly an interesting one to talk about. We can do, and you know what, we will do. As Joshua Spears is going to be that first driver who did take tires, as Simply Steve is going to come down pit road. And the reason why I say we'll talk about it is because I'm very interested to see Joshua Spears. Now that he has brand new tires, he can push as hard as he wants, and his tires will last him till the end of the race, as he has made it through the halfway mark on the first set. These other drivers are gonna have to be almost driving on eggshells, trying desperately to get no lockups, no spins, just really trying to slow up the car mid-corner so it doesn't burn off rubber. it's going to be a bit of a strategy game here for sure when it comes to the long run, and potentially we'll see some cars decide to take all 4 in the final stop, which will certainly be something to talk about when we get there. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, James.
Yeah, and so it looks like Simply Steve is going to take tires on this stop. He's been in his stall for about 43 seconds and counting. So it looks to me, I mean, Simply Steve and Joshua Spears are going to be close out on track once they get out on pit road. Simply Steve behind by about a second here, it looks like. Those are the 2 drivers currently 8th and 9th out on track that we know are on fresh tires underneath them. The top 7 drivers have double stinted. Now, we were expecting most drivers to take their 4 fresh tires underneath them on that second stop, so most of the field kind of throwing strategy out the window here, or at least the strategy that we were expecting. They have their own strategy, and they just didn't let us know, I reckon. But I'm very intrigued how this is going to play out for these drivers. But hey, it's the crown jewel. It's a 1.5 times points race, so drivers able to get 50% more points for finishing well. But we've got a big crash report. It looks like Crew and Matthew Kasuda nose to tail in a very precarious position here. And the field's coming by, and they're too wide. Oh, goodness.
Well, we get it sorted out in the end, thankfully. And, yeah. Look, that was a bit of a situation, to put it lightly.
Well, that was turn
we'll see
1.
exactly what caused this. So, into turn 2, and...
Oh. Big contact.
Okay.
Huge contact. Now I'm going to keep this camera angle pulled up. This is where things get really, really scary for the rest of the field. These drivers are both waiting for kind of one guy to make the move, but look at this. They're going to be too wide coming around crash traffic. Luckily, some drivers threw out the binders there and locked up and avoided it, but that is not what you want to see.
Yeah, I believe that was Sector who was forced to give up that spot to Prince Adam there on the outside as they were coming to that. Really, those 2 drivers, and Eat My Dust is going to have to give up the position to Simply Steve and Joshua Spears. Again, on that fresh rubber, now that they've warmed it up after 1 lap of driving around, they're going to be having a full head of steam out here and catching up the field quickly and quite quickly, I'm sure of that, as it still looks like the 2 of them are going to be nose to tail. Eat My Dust is going to be trundling along behind his teammate Simply Steve, and we'll see if he can keep pace with them as well. Yeah,
this is Steve's first flying lap after the fresh tires have been put on. Spears right in front of him on the same tire strategy, but 3-lap older tires, so not really enough to make a difference this early in the run. And there's Nodovan and Captain CK having a battle for 5th. They're both on their original sets of tires as well. So it's going to be interesting to see for me, is Spears and Steve going to be able to close that 5.7 second deficit that they have running 7th and 8th, or are they going to spend too much time battling each other and maybe allow these top 5 drivers who are all on their original set of tires a chance to kind of break away here?
Yeah, it's certainly something that we'll be looking at and keeping an eye on throughout the entirety of the race going forward. The Captain CK and Nodovan, this battle has been going on for a very long time and still continues to do so. I believe Captain CK was actually in front of Nodovan for a little bit there and has found himself behind once again. So still trying to fight his way back up past Nodovan into the top 5. Whether it stays the top 5 way it is or not, strategy's gonna be a big factor in that one, as Captain CK lost the rear end just a little bit there, but able to keep it together. And there they are just behind them, Joshua Spears, Simply Steve.
Yeah, they're closing that gap rather quickly. It was almost a 6-second gap at one point. Last time by, it looks like Simply Steve running about 6-7 tenths faster than Nodovan and Captain CK, so almost a full second. And I'm willing to wager here that's the tire fall off we were talking about, in combination with attrition from these drivers, especially when we get in the tight, twisty portions of the racetrack. And in addition to Spears and Steve working that draft together, that's where they're really able to shine. pulling their way closer and closer to the top 5. And yeah, the lap times reflected here, Garrett. They ran almost 2 seconds faster than 5th and 6th place. Spears and Steve linked up nose to tail. They are closing the gap and doing so rather quickly as they stay in the draft. And here comes Steve making a move for 7th.
Yeah, let's not beat around the bush either. This definitely could be a battle for the lead if things work out the way they're looking at. Even Dickinson is not quite as quick as these two right now, so it's looking very interesting as they sort themselves out for the moment. Simply Steve is going to have to wait behind Joshua Spears for the moment, but he's going to look for another pass, I'm sure, soon enough. As we talk about tire wear, for those coming from an oval background, on ovals your tires get tuned through a lot quicker. The tire compounds are a lot softer than what you see on these endurance machines, and also the banking certainly not helping with tire wear, putting a lot of load on those right sides. But when we come to a track like this with cars like these, the endurance tire lasts a lot longer, but I'm not sure it's going to last all the way to 2 hours. We're going to have to wait and see how the tire management is with these drivers, especially when we're talking about Sean Dickinson in the first position.
Yeah, Dickinson almost, yeah, let's call it as it is, 10 seconds ahead, still on his original set of tires. He's been out there for a long time. Last pit stop, 18 seconds, but I think Dickinson trying to kind of maybe make up for that botched pit stop he had on the first cycle. He was almost 3-4 seconds slower than everybody else out on track, and he's got to be really happy. If he's talking to his spotter and his crew chief, knowing that Simply Steve and Joshua Spears are beating and banging back here for 7th, that is going to be using up a little bit more tire for these two guys, and that is exactly the position Dickinson wants to be in right now. Let these guys wear out tires behind them. He can focus on hitting his marks up front, because Dickinson was actually 0.2 faster than Simply Steve or Joshua Spears last time by. And that's the benefit of the clean track ahead of him. He's not having to race other drivers very hard. He can be a little bit slower, a little bit smoother on the inputs, and really focus on tire management over this run, as well as fuel management that we saw him do on that second pit stop.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you can see right now, we're still looking at these two battles really up front. Not Captain CK. Even Nick Beaver is caught to the back of Tonlo now as well for the second place spot. So, we talk about it week in, week out with J2ICS, but, battles all across the circuit. Doesn't matter what kind of driver you are, whether you're just getting into it or you've been here for a while and view yourself as quite the professional race driver. There's always someone to battle and have a great race with when it comes to the Just Two Idiots Cup Series.
Yeah, these guys put on a great show every time they're on track. Doesn't matter if it's the sprint or the endurance race, sponsored by Designer's Home Gallery. It's just great racing and great camaraderie. You can frequently find these guys in practice sessions together, even they're in team championships, which is very close, by the way. 8 points separating the top 3 teams in the championship. But throughout the week, you can see these guys put in work, even with either with their own teams or with the different teams. And as a reminder to the fans at home, Speed Squad currently up front in the team championship. Oh, we got it. Oh, who's that? It's Paper Bag and Matthew Kasuda. Oh, Kasuda finishing off the car a little bit there. Let's see what happened. Focusing on the number 8. Kasuda loops it, saves it, doesn't. Oh, Paper Bag just nowhere to go. Let's watch that one once more.
Yeah.
That was a violent hit for Paper Bag. The Paper Bag, the number 8, Kasuda, the bright yellow. Kasuda swaps. You see Paper Bag trying to avoid and just lawn darts himself into the tire barrier. Now somehow, Paper Bag was able to come down pit road under his own power. Hopefully he has a fast repair in the back pocket, because that was a massive hit to the front of that Porsche.
Yeah, that was That was absolutely brutal, and absolutely nothing he could have done either. Along for the ride was Paper Bag, and he's actually coming out of pit road right now, so one of those get out of jail free cards with the fast repairs definitely being used there.
Yeah, so sorry, before that massive incident, I was trying to say it's Speed Squad, your current #1 team, Love Seat second in the team points, and Upfront Motorsports making up third. You've got SimCity fourth in points, and Night Racing rounding out the top 5. But we have 17 different teams represented here at the Just Two Idiots Cup Series Endurance. So a lot of great guys coming out, putting on a show, and pretty impressed as well, Gareth. Matthew Kasuda's in pit road again, the number 11 machine. He's rejoined several times, but I know for certain only one driver has officially retired. That's Troy Banks in the 888. All the 23 other drivers still out on track, putting in some big work out there.
Oh yeah, and it's a massive ask. We can't deny it at all. 2 hours of solid driving, not including the qualifying and practice time as well, which was an extra hour ahead of this race. So, and you know, once they're done with all of that racing, then they get the enjoyment to some, and to some not at all, of talking to us if they end up in the top few spots, James.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of these guys in the past as we're on board Beaver, who's won all sorts of different cars, classes, series, always very consistent. But it looks like Tonlo and Beaver about to have some lap traffic right ahead of them as they are battling still for that second place spot. We are an hour, let's call it an hour 15. Let's do a little bit of southern rounding here, if you will, into this feature event, the Crown Jewel. And looked like Tonlo might have been trying to pull a little bit of a sneaky move there. I've seen it before at another track where you hope the driver is falling so close behind, you swerve away from an impact point the last second and that driver tags it. Almost looked like Tonlo was trying to lead Beaver into the pit road wall there.
Yes, sometimes that can be a very big disaster zone, and thankfully both the drivers being well aware of where exactly that barrier begins. That pit road entry, not a very nice one here at Interlagos. It has been more updated. Unfortunately, the iRacing service does not have a modern day scan of the track, so not having that updated pit entry with a bit of a chicane there to slow the cars down earlier on. But as we look forward a little bit further back, it looked like one of the Beamers went out wide, and I believe that may have been, who was that?
Maybe Biker Pilot? Yeah, Biker Pilot, the number 42 machine, who is a lap down. So that was not have been Captain CK and Simply Steve, who made their way around the lap down BMW. So Biker using the runoff here at Interlagos, saying, hey, there's a big pack of drivers right behind me. I'm not involved in their race. Let me take the safest way off I can and kind of let these guys get on through and get back to the racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget that Simply Steve has 4 freshies underneath him, so he's going to be pushing a lot harder than Captain CK, and not even just in front. Should be looking to make a pass as quickly as possible if he wants to stay up towards the front of this race.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that develops, because Simply Steve has put about a 1.8 second gap over Joshua Spears, who is on the same tire strategy. And Steve charging forward here in that number 1 Corvette. Oh, it's going to be a big sin into turn 1, but no, has to follow CK for a little while longer. Good to see Jace Meyer join us in the spectator area as well. He's hopping in, enjoying some clean racing here at the J2ICS Endurance Series. And let's see, Steve is going to work up to the left side. Looks like CK wants to cover it. Let's see, Steve's been making some good moves here. Big drive out of that machine. But CK able to fend him off a little while longer here.
Yeah, absolutely amazing move by Captain CK. Very, very surprised, as Simply Steve was absolutely hurling everything at him except maybe the kitchen sink. And it looked like that he was able to hold it together due to that fact. So still on the charge for Nonovan as well, just ahead. somehow managing to stay involved just behind him. So this battle just keeps continuing as they have another lapped car ahead of him, and he's going to have to make sure that he stays out of it, and that will be Crew, who is a lap or two down. And it looks like Simply Steve got the better run on Captain CK out of the final corner.
Oh, it's a busy racetrack.
Simply Steve is going to make that work. Maybe try and use Crew even as a pick as they head into turn 1. Crew's going to back out of it, and they're still side by side heading there.
Yeah, neither driver willing to yield here. CK, is going to lose the spot. There goes Simply Steve finally making his way through, but that has cost him a ton of time. He is now 1.1 second back from Nodovan in that 128 Corvette. Not a Mustang, a Corvette. So it's going to be interesting to see if Steve can close that gap back up. But, man, he's making big strides. But Captain CK, we're about to know very quickly if he's got any tire left underneath him. He's still within 4/10 of that number 1. And I would imagine we're about to see him give it his all in that number 50 Ford and try and close that gap back to the blue and red Corvette. And it looks like he's doing a good job hanging with him here, but Steve is gaining 100th of a second here, 100th there, maybe a few hundredths in a different corner, and extending that gap to about 3/4 of a second. I think CK is really feeling the effects of tires at this point.
Yeah, and that Ford, notorious and well known throughout the iRacing community, to not have quite as much grip, shall we say, or not as much love throughout the corners, and mixed towards that tire wear as well. I'm not sure that's going to be doing him any sorts of favors. The Corvette generally known as a bit of a safer pick, and with a little bit more aerodynamic or mechanical grip underneath that car. Not sure which one it has a little bit more of, but it definitely seems to be a bit more stable underneath the driver's seat. So Captain CK is going to be feeling the effects of those tires just a little bit earlier, and it seems like that is exactly what's happening as Joshua Spears now finds himself right behind, and he'll want to pass Captain CK as quickly as possible because he wants to get back up to Simply Steve as well and continue that fight they had earlier on as Captain CK runs wide and going to lose that spot to Joshua Spears now.
Yeah, Joshua Spears maybe taking his time a little bit more, maybe thinking of tire management. That 84 machine was a strong bet to be in a podium position at the end of this Crown Jewel race, but we're kind of definitely in the back stretch here, Gareth. We've got 40 minutes left to go. Nodovan and Simply Steve battling for 5th, but what's going on up front, Gareth? It's Tonlo and Nick Beaver still separated by less than 1/10 of a second and an extremely busy racetrack ahead of them.
Yeah, they're going to have to be very cautious to not fight each other too hard as just in front of them. I believe that is Sector, and he's going to be taking up a little bit of raceway. One of the Porsches there not quite so happy with the driver in front, as typically the flash of the lights indicating, hey, you've done something wrong, in my opinion. Not always the case. Sometimes it is a thank you, must be said. Always a bit hard to discern that one. But yeah, it looks like this track is still going to be very busy in front of these two, as that's going to be a battling, I believe, Prince Adam and Ace.
Yeah, so that was Ace 22 and Sector having a battle for the 15th place position, and then the second and third place drivers cutting through. Oh my goodness, this is not where Tonlo and Nick Beaver want to be right now. They want to be out of the vortex of danger, but instead they are right here in the meat grinder. These guys are having their own battle for position out on track, so it's tough to yield to the race leaders without giving up a spot, but I think Tonlo and Beaver, they've got their elbows out right now. They're coming through regardless. It's a courtesy that they're being shown, the blue flags being shown to the drivers in front. Oh, and it was about to tighten up there on the pit road, but looks like Tonlo and Beaver are able to finally get through that one.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Somebody locked it up.
Yeah, that was a lockup by Ace just behind Prince Adam there as well, because he was trying to take advantage of Prince Adam being checked up by the leaders, trying to let them by, and just wasn't able to get there as Prince Adam slammed the door shut, as should be said, as now he's under fire from Sector. So these two battles, one of them a 3-car battle, one of them a 2-car battle, they are right next to each other. Not exactly the ideal scenario out on track.
Yeah, we almost saw the world famous Interlagos bowling incident. I know you and I have seen that before in open wheel cars, and another lockup from H22 there that might allow Sector to fire back the 95, but it's one thing crashing yourself out, it's another thing crashing your friends out, but it's a much worse feeling crashing your friends out that are a lap ahead of you, as I've unfortunately had the experience before of being quote-unquote that guy on iRacing. So thankfully the field getting through that one relatively okay, but with less than 40 minutes left to go in the main event, it's even more frustrating as well to have your race ended very late in the race after putting in an hour and 23 minutes in the sim so far. And to their credit, these guys are doing a great job as we're watching another 3-car battle. Donovan, Simply Steve, and Joshua Spears battling very hard for that 5th place position. Donovan still on his original set of tires. Simply Steve and Joshua Spears linked up behind. They took a full set of tires on lap 38 for Spears, 41 for Simply Steve. So trying to put that fresh rubber to work, but I do wonder if these drivers are maybe worried about using too much tire in the run and not having enough for the end of this race.
Yeah, it's always going to be a little bit of a factor playing in the back of their heads, but I'm sure Simply Steve is starting to get quite a bit frustrated with Donovan. Granted, it is a battle for the lead. Donovan has every right to be there and defend as hard as possible, but Simply Steve will be looking in the rearview mirror and knows that Joshua Spears, due to their fierce battling, has caught back up, and he's not going to want to wait around much longer. Pulls to the inside of Donovan, doesn't have the run, but might send it in anyway. Decides against it. Smart driving from him, and he's going to have to deal with Joshua Spears once again, lurking just in the background of these two drivers, waiting for something to happen.
Now, question for you, Gareth. We're saying this could be very much the battle for the lead, assuming everybody in the top 5 has to take tires the next go-around, but Simply Steve, Donovan, Joshua Spears, they are 45 seconds back from Dickinson right now. Do you think that with the top 5, we would assume taking tires the next time around, is that going to put Steve and Spears back in the lead here?
That's a very tough call. As you can see, Simply Steve has made the move. Donovan doesn't want to give him any space on exit. He runs out of space himself. Keeps it together, though. What a great drive. Unfortunately, going to lose the spot to Joshua Spears, though, as Spears has the inside line. Bit of a better run, and will have the entry into turn 1. So unless they fight tooth and nail, he will have that spot over Donovan. Donovan doesn't want to give it up, you can tell, and he has to as they make their way into turns 1, 2, and 3. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, James, it's going to be a very interesting one. Dickinson at this point, I think, I want to say that he might be out just enough to keep that first place position, but if you're Tonlo, Nick Beaver, at this point I'd be scared that these two drivers that we're looking at right now would be going past, and I don't know if it would be worth it, but I'm not sure how those tyre temps are looking. Or tyre wear is looking, I should say. These drivers would know better than I, as they'd be feeling it right through their driver's seat, and it'll be interesting. I feel like at this point, Tonlo, Beaver, you know who, are going to have to stay out just to keep their position. But what that's going to do to the tyre wear, I'm not sure. I believe Dickinson is still in that position where he can take tyres, and he should be good to go. However, we'll lose the spot to Tonlo, Beaver, and potentially you know who as well, if he comes down and takes tyres. So much strategy at play. And I know I didn't answer your question very well, James, but there's too much to almost delve in and decide what to do.
I see, Joshua Spears down pit road for what should be the final time of the night. Last time he was in his pit stall, just about 46 seconds. We're expecting a 17 to 18 second pit stop from Spears this time by. I think, here's another question for you, Gareth. Is he going to make it till the end on fuel? The longest fuel stint we've seen, I believe, was about 30 minutes. If I'm doing my broadcast math correctly, which is normally wrong, that would put him needing to save almost 3 minutes of fuel to make it to the end. He's out of his pit stall 17.4 seconds, so we are down to the final, let's call it 32 minutes to see what these drivers are going to be able to do. Dickinson has a lot of traffic ahead, but Tonlo and Beaver still linked up 2/10 behind. Now, for the fans at home, we think Dickinson, if he takes 4 tires, which we would assume he would on his final stop, we think he's going to still either be in the lead or very much be in the hunt for the lead. But we're not sure what some of these other drivers are going to do. Tonlo, Beaver, you know who, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th have yet to take tires. But the lap times are still good, Gareth. Tonlo and Beaver, minute 29.5 last time by, matching the pace being set by Dickinson. I would be shocked if these drivers could make it the whole run on tires, but if they can, that would be a spectacular strategy call to put them back in a podium contention.
Yeah, there's certainly a point on not only GTE cars but all endurance vehicles. There's certainly a point where the tires, they almost feel like they're pretty much the same. They wear a little bit at the start, and then they stay a relatively consistent pace, I would say, for a very big bulk proportion of the tire's lifespan. But once you get down to about 40, maybe 30% of tire grip left, you're really pushing the boundaries of the limits of grip that the tire is wanting to provide for these cars. And these cars, let's not forget, they're big heavy machines. They've got a lot of aero pushing them to the ground, which is forcing more wear on that tire. And it's just something that we're going to have to keep an eye on. Now, Tonlo and Beaver's in a good position now we think about it, because although in terms of tire wear, maybe not the best, he has the benefit of having Beaver just in front. Oh, sorry, Dickinson has come down now, so that's exactly what we were looking for. Yep. As that confuddled me up here in the booth. You know who down pit road as well? Dickinson straight out, so he's not taking tires at all. He is just going for a splash and dash, so he's going to stay out in front. And geez, if he can stay on these tires since the very start of the race, I think that's pretty incredible, James.
So correct me if I'm wrong, we don't think Dickinson has taking tires at all here, correct? It doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Believe so.
I don't think he has. He's running consistent 19-20 second pit stop. So interesting here, Gareth. I don't know what we're gonna see. Let me see if
I have witnessed it. While you attempt to do that, James. Yeah, I have seen it before where, you know, I've thought personally that my tire wear's feeling a bit low, I'll come down, and some drivers haven't come down and they've stayed out and they've absolutely blitzed me. So there's a potential chance that the strategy call was just wrong on Joshua Spear's part and Simply Steve's part as well, and it could come back to bite them as this battle splits up. Like I was saying, Nick Beaver is going to be able to save a bit more fuel behind Tonlo using that draft, not having to push as much air in front of him, as it looked like the Rio is trying to slide out, James.
Yeah, easy there, Beaver. Hard into turn 1. This could be the final hurrah to see what tires are going to work out well. Dickinson up into second on strategy. We got confirmation Dickinson has not taken tires, running about 18-second pit stops very consistently. Tonlo also looking at 18-second pit stops. Simply Steve in fourth, kind of the dark horse here, if you will, to see if he can make something happen with pit strategy and make it till the end. We expect Simply Steve, he's one of the only drivers in the top 5, the only driver in the top 5 who has for certain taking a full set of tires underneath him. And now it's going to be the Nick Beaver show, getting a credit for a lap led here. Last time by Beaver, a 129.51. His fastest lap of the race was a 129.06. So he's still very much on brand as far as pacing goes. We know Beaver has to come down pit road one more time. Dickinson, 15.8 seconds behind a 15.7. I think Dickinson's looking good here to get at least back in the race lead, at least take it away from Beaver, knowing that Beaver is going to have to take that fuel stop here at the end. And here we go, Beaver down pit road.
Yeah, Beaver's going to have to give up that position, but he's also going to have to make sure that he does not take tyres, because that is going to severely hurt his position out on track. So he's going to have to make sure that he doesn't take him. Simply Steve right behind Tonlo right now, and Simply Steve, let's not forget, did take that fresh rubber, so he's going to be able to push as much as he likes. So strategy-wise, I'd say Joshua Spears has definitely been hurt by the exact same strategy that we saw Simply Steve.
Oh, and Steve and Nodovin's down pit road.
So I take that back. I thought Steve had already come down pit road, forgotten that he hadn't, so he's going to come down and get something sorted out. So maybe the strategy going forward, and this is one of those races you learn, Nick Beaver has come out in front of Tonlo, but you know, this is one of those races that a lot of these drivers are going to learn now, hey, in a 2-hour race, maybe we don't have to pit for tires. Maybe we can go the whole way and not have it be a massive issue for the next Crown Jewel race when it comes, which I believe will be the final endurance race of the season at Indianapolis.
I'll be there. And Gareth, maybe I'm having terrible broadcaster thoughts here, but how amazing would it be to have rain for that final Crown Jewel?
Ooh, that's speaking of amazing, look at that exit as Joshua Spears and Nodovan were almost side by side coming into turn 4 out of pit exit. So that was pretty incredible. But oh man, so for those of you who don't know, it's been an ongoing, almost a joke at this point. iRacing keeps on telling us that rain is coming, and they've said so for about a year, I think, at this point.
Oh, at least,
just a bit
yes,
over
sir.
a year. That they've been teasing, here comes the rain, but the rain has not shown up yet. iRacing's still one of the only sims out there without simulated rain. However, it has been teased. It was teased once again in a new state, in a new sort of development build. It was teased highly for December this year. Doesn't look like they're going to make it, but so everyone is led to believe that it'll make it by the special event, I believe Daytona 24-hour, which will be in the late January next year. And I believe that the Crown Jewel that we're going to see at the end of the Endurance Series will be around that time, and I think maybe even after it as well. So yeah, if rain's going to come out, that'd be interesting to see join this this racing, as I'm sure it would only make it more interesting strategy-wise.
Yeah, and Tonlo was catching up to Nick Beaver here, but I think Tonlo a little bit of a bobble there, giving a few tenths of a second back to Beaver. We got another car guy cheering on Book, who's running P16. 17, excuse me. Book
Yeah, he's in pits right now.
Yeah, down pit road, but still up 2 spots from where he started from, so not a bad night, all things considered. And I'm loving the golden hour here at Interlagos as well, as Dickinson is taking the rest of the field to the world-famous Australian restaurant, Gapplebee's, as he is a full 15 seconds up over Beaver, 16 seconds up over Tonlo. Dickinson, and still running a great pace. His fastest lap on 128.7, last time by a 129.7. So he is just absolutely moving here. And looking at the track map on the bottom right, relatively clean air ahead of him. He's got Paper Bag not too far ahead, and then Eat My Dust and Nicolator running 9th and 10th on the circuit. So hopefully, for Dickinson's sake, he can keep things rocking and rolling here, just avoid the traffic and really keep himself out of the vortex of danger. We've got less than 24 minutes left to go in this first Crown Jewel endurance event of the year, and we're seeing some more drivers with off-track excursions there. There's Crew just ahead of the race leader, and this is what we were talking about. Dickinson's going to pick those passes very carefully here.
Yeah, he's going to have to be very, very cautious around lap traffic. Definitely, you don't want to be leading the race for pretty much the entire time at this point, almost an hour and 40 minutes, only to find yourself hitting pit road towards the end of this event. that would absolutely be heartbreaking. But I reckon we should jump back to Sector and Prince Adam, because the battle for 13th is looking very, very hot right now.
The battle for, you said 17th?
I think 13th is what
13th.
I meant.
Yeah, there we go.
That's
That's
said 17th.
yeah, no,
as a slip of the tongue.
no worries, as you kids say. It's Sector, Prince Adam, Just Dylan. Separated by about a half second between Sector and Prince Adam. About a second back is Just Dylan, the number 21 machine. Dylan, he's had an uphill battle all night here at Interlagos, but Prince Adam, he's down one spot. Sector is up 4 positions, and I believe both drivers are on the same tire strategy at this point as well. So Sector and the bright yellow number 95 Corvette doing his best to hold on to it, but it looks like Just Dylan closing the gap back there. 2 Beamers are chasing that number 95 of Sector.
Yeah, Sector with a nice bright. This is I believe this Sector and Crew might be teammates here, because now that I'm noticing, Crew has the yellow mirrors and the blue car, and Sector is the exact opposite. So that would make perfect sense to me, as the BMW of Prince Adam looking to the inside. We saw Prince Adam absolutely hopping the curb in turn 3 earlier this lap, so we know that he is pushing the absolute lights off of that BMW right now, and maybe we'll make the move as a little bit of bobble out of Sector just in front, heading into the final corner, and down the straightaway into turn 1 will be the move, but maybe not, as Prince Adam had to really lock it up to not get into the back of Sector, and now finds himself with Just Dylan right behind.
Gareth, something has happened. Dickinson is down pit road once more. That's his 4th stop. Nick Beaver, I think, is going to take over the race lead here. Tonlo is in hot pursuit. Something has happened to Dickinson. He was in his pit stall for 4.4 seconds. That might be indicative of a fast repair, and here we go. We're 3 wide here at Interlagos. Very briefly, it's Beaver, Dickinson, Tonlo. All of a sudden, things have been shaken up here in the top 3, and Beaver leading the overall. Dickinson is in very hot pursuit.
Yeah, that was Bob Nova, unfortunately involved in that one, backing out of it, doing a great job there. Tonlo is hoping that something happens as he catches up to the back bumper of these two, but Dickinson finds himself in a lot of battle now. Let's not forget, all of these 3 drivers have those old tyres they've been on since the start, and somehow I'm very impressed with the Ford that is underneath Nick Beaver now. Didn't expect to see it Ford out in front, but he's doing a great job keeping that thing underneath. And Dickinson, I cannot believe, came down pit road.
I figured it out.
If we were hoping for a spicy finish, that is exactly what we're going to get. What happened there, James?
So I think after that 3rd pit stop, I made a commented on it up here in the booth. I put Dickinson at least 5 minutes short on fuel. I think that was a splash and go. I think he threw in a couple of gallons to make it till the end here.
Oh, you could be absolutely right. I mean, that would make perfect sense to me, as he did come down a little bit earlier than the other drivers around. So, but that almost makes me start wondering if Beaver and Tonlo have to come down pit road, because now I'm wondering, I know they pitted a little bit later, but you have to wonder if they've got enough fuel to the end as well.
I think that's going to be heavily dependent. So Beaver, I saw him doing a fair amount of fuel saving, not as much as Dickinson was, but Beaver I've seen do some pretty magical things with fuel mileage races in the past. I think what's going to really depend to now is if Dickinson has more than enough to make it to the end, he can put the pressure on Beaver to maybe carry a faster pace than that number 10 machine really wanted to. If Beaver's focusing on fuel numbers right now, he no longer has that safety barrier to fuel save. Dickinson, the number 64 Porsche, and Tonlo, maybe not so much Tonlo, but Dickinson, we think, definitely has enough to make it to the end. He's going to keep the pressure on Beaver here, trying to force Beaver to burn up more fuel than he really wants to in these remaining 19 minutes, and maybe force Beaver down pit road. I think we'll know with about 10 minutes left to go if that's going to be the case, and we'll see what Beaver does as far as lap times. If he continues clicking off 1 minute 30 or so, we know he's pretty good till the end. Beaver has one more lap of fuel than Tonlo. Beaver pitted on lap 61, Tonlo on lap 60. So if Tonlo, I don't know here, Gareth. I would imagine we'll know when we know. If Beaver backs off the throttle, then that'll be indicative that he's not going to make it on fuel. Tonlo seems to be doing something like that already, 1 second behind these top two, but I think Dickinson's going to hammer out some absolute heater of lap times right now, and we're going to know in about 8 minutes if they're going to have enough fuel.
Oh, Josh, James, sorry. Oh man, I'm getting, I'm stressing out here in the booth, and I'm not even, I can't even imagine what the spectators are thinking, let alone what the drivers are going through right now. As Dickinson is still right behind Beaver, as you said, trying to apply as much pressure as possible to really keep Beaver on the hammer, and that is going to make sure that he spends up as much fuel as possible. But like you said, he was the last car of these leaders to come down pit road, so it's really anyone's game at this point. They've only got about, let's say, 17 minutes left, just over, and man, oh man, with a minute and a half per lap, there's not a whole lot to go left in this race.
Yeah, if you would have asked me an hour ago if this was going to be a 3-car shootout at the end, I would have said no. I would have said Dickinson was walking away with this thing. I believe at one point he had a 15-second advantage over the rest of the field. Now he finds himself playing second fiddle behind Beaver's Ford number 10 machine. Beaver is up 6 positions so far. So not only is he the race leader, he is also our hard charger so far of the night. And the crown jewel question, where we have 1.5 points available for him, does Beaver have the fuel? Beaver ran very fast consistently in practice. I mean, it was simply Steve and 2 different practice sessions put in the top spot. Beaver was second fastest in the Tuesday practice, third fastest in the Sunday practice. And now we're also seeing drivers, Gareth, I would imagine getting closer to those incident point limits as well, as Dickinson trying to remount a charge here against Beaver.
Yeah, Dickinson, I imagine being up front would have saved a few more of those incident points than some of the other drivers behind, especially Beaver, with him being involved in battles literally for almost 2 hours now with different drivers. It's absolutely incredible to see where he's come from and battled his way very heavily, I might add, all the way through to this current first spot. So it's really got a weigh on the mind. He hasn't quit battling. Now I think about it, his mental fortitude right now is definitely being tested, as he's been battling the entire time pretty much this race.
Yeah, Beaver's still hammering down lap times. He's only a half second off his fastest lap of the race last time by. He actually ran almost a full tenth and a half faster than Dickinson. And they have managed to shake off Tonlo's 04 machine, but here we go. Oh, I thought Dickinson was going to take a push towards the inside line. Oh, Beaver with a bobble. Beaver bobbles through turn 1. Dickinson back over the race lead.
Absolutely incredible save, it must be said, by Nick Beaver. Dickinson showed the front bumper to the inside. Beaver didn't want any part of any potential issue, so left the gap open, ran way too wide. That Ford was not happy to be there and it tried to shake itself loose. He hung on to it, and now in the clutches of Tonlo, who's going to be very happy to see that Ford is struggling and is going to take as much advantage as possible, trying to get right on the back bumper of Nick Beaver.
You know who's happy right now? Penny Dickinson, losing her mind in the spectator area, seeing Sean take back over that top spot in the number 64 machine. It was almost uncharacteristic to not see the 64 machine in the race lead. And now we're about to see, does Beaver have anything left in the back pocket? Less than 15 minutes left to go with this Designer's Home Gallery Crown Jewel sponsored event. The top 3 separated by less than a second. And Gareth, we're 3 wide. Dickinson, huge problems.
Dickinson way out of line. Nick Beaver offline as well. Tonlo was the only one to make it round the final corner in a very productive manner, and it seems to have suited him big time as Tonlo back to the lead. What has this race come to? Two hours, and it all comes down to this, James, as Nick Beaver still in the second position. He's taken it back over from Dickinson, who finds himself in third right now and having to do exactly what he just did, but with Tonlo added into the mix as well.
I'm going to try and get a replay queued up of that one, because that was just absolutely insane. So let's see what happened. Let's focus in on Dickinson. pushes wide all on his lonesome. Beaver and Tonlo, a little bit of contact.
Ooh.
Man, how lucky was Dickinson there?
He was so close to hitting that external barrier that sticks out way too much. We might have to see if we can get something to do with that by the marshals next time we come here, because that seems like a bit of a danger zone. I should not be laughing about that, as Nick Beaver is still in the second position. Dickinson in third, continuing to do so, but these drivers have not stopped. The battle just keeps on ramping up. Crew finds himself with the 3 leaders behind, and I'm sure he is quaking in his boots looking at what is coming up behind.
13 and a half minutes left. 12 and a half minutes. I'm not good at math.
Dickinson!
Oh, Dickinson.
Dickinson go wide again. Tonlo also ran wide. Beaver with the only one with a nice exit, and he's going to see if he can make that stick all the way through to turn 1 and see if he can do something. Tonlo's on the defensive, though. Is he going to try and make it stick? Dickinson falls back a little bit. No, Beaver's going to stay behind for the moment. Dickinson should be able to catch back up as these two continue the fight, but the question has to be, has Dickinson run the tyres off of his Porsche at this point? Has he been really trying to stretch his legs too much early on in this race and doesn't have enough left in them at this point?
Yeah, I would have never imagined Tonlo out of nowhere was going to be leading laps here at Interlagos. I would have thought, going to be happy for a third place spot, but it's Tonlo, Beaver, Dickinson, Porsche, Ford, Porsche, with a Corvette running fourth with Simply Steve, another Porsche in fifth with Joshua Spears. We haven't talked about in a while, but it's definitely a 3-car shootout, but there's lap traffic on the horizon for Tonlo. This is going to stack things up behind the race leader. Oh, Beaver and Dickinson both looking for a chance through, and we talked about earlier, oh, there goes Crew. Well done, hopping way off the racetrack, almost too far off the racetrack as he pulls very, very wide, but we were worried Beaver wasn't going to have enough fuel to the end. We haven't even mentioned Tonlo. He came in a lap 60, 1 lap prior than the number 10 Ford of Beaver, and man, Dickinson really fighting with that left-hander there. I think the tire fall off is going to be every man for himself, and this is where we have to really worry about drivers hitting the incident point limit. Nobody wants to have to serve a drive-through penalty 10 laps left to go, unless you're doing it with everybody else inside the top 3.
It's so true. Imagine if we had a drive-through penalty for all 3 of these drivers all at the same time. And then you had Simply Steve catching up to the rest of them as he is on fresh tyres. So that would be an incredible finish, as if it wasn't incredible enough already, with Dickinson catching all the way back up to these 2 leaders. So once again, we're in a very, very close 3-car battle with only half a second separating all drivers. Dickinson gets another off track registered there. So like you said, they're going to really have to worry. This 20 incident limit is going to be on these drivers' minds. Perhaps not as much so as the race itself for the position, because this is absolutely incredible, James.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty gnarly all the way down the end. I never would have thought with less than 10 minutes left to go, we were going to have 3 cars within pretty much a half a second, putting on such a great show for the fans at home. I would still say this is very much anybody's guess on who's going to bring it home, especially with how much on the ragged edge these drivers are. Looks like Dickinson gets that corner dialed in a little bit, trying to slow in fast out here. Now it looks like he's actually going to lose. No, he's gaining some time here with good corner exit. He's 6/10 off the back of Tonlo and Beaver, but these two are working the draft against each other. That is going to play to their advantage, but Dickinson, just with raw power in that Porsche, closing the gap into turn 1. Oh, gains almost 0.3 of a second there. Dickinson is here to party within a quarter of a second of Beaver and Tonlo, who are still battling for the race lead. Oh my goodness, we got 9 minutes left to go. Beaver looks like he's hungry to make a pass for the lead, looks to the inside line of Tonlo. Is he going to commit? No, hops back in line.
Yeah, now this is going to be really interesting to see. I almost wonder if Tonlo saved a whole lot of tire. Excuse me, as my brain is trying to comprehend what is going on in front of me right now. But yeah, Tonlo saved a bit of tire, I reckon, behind these two, as these two were battling quite a lot, and then they made that mistake coming out of that final corner. Tonlo took advantage, so I wonder if he's got a little bit more tire underneath him than the 2 drivers currently following in his wake. And if he does, that's certainly he's putting it to use right now. And this again brings into question Nick Beaver and Tonlo's fuel situation. Dickinson right behind, we know he's perfectly fine, but these two in front, we've only got 8 minutes left. Can they make it on fuel? And who's going to come out on top? These are the two questions we're very, very eager to see what the outcome will be.
Yeah, I've got no idea. We know Dickinson's good to go on fuel to make it to the end with that lap 65 splash off. Tonlo and Beaver a little bit questionable on fuel, so I think Dickinson is going to ride behind until he feels comfortable making a charge to the lead, making sure these top two drivers do not have a second of reprieve, so they're staying on the gas and staying at full race pace. All three of these drivers right around the 1 minute 30 mark last time by, and these guys are just here putting on a show. Here comes Dickinson. No, where'd Dickinson go? There he goes, reappears ahead of Nick Beaver. He's got a little bit of the Aussie internet luck. Dickinson takes over second. Beaver's going to fall back to third. That gives Tonlo a half-second advantage up front.
Yeah, we haven't seen a single driver, I don't think, since we've been watching this race have any sort of internet issues whatsoever, but all of a sudden, Dickinson with a little bit of a bobble. Thankfully, that's not going to affect him at all, as it wasn't enough of an issue to really cause any problems. But that may also hinder Beaver from making a move that he could potentially make. We're seeing potentially an incident out on track somewhere. I'm not quite sure if that was earlier on in the race or not. I'm getting a bit too excited looking at this three-car battle up front. But Dickinson closing right onto the back bumper of Tonlo with a great exit, and he's going to try and make the move into turn one.
Yeah, that was a much better exit out of the final corner here on the start-finish line. He's within a tenth of Tonlo. I think he's going to go for it here. Tonlo guarding the inside line, but Dickinson's got some legs on that number 64 Porsche. Let's see if Beaver closes the gap. As there's contact, Gareth! A huge moment. Dickinson gets pushed off track. Tonlo takes it back over. Beaver up into second.
It is absolutely heartbreak, especially for Penny Dickinson, who was really, really rooting for that machine there, who is now.
It's not over yet.
Himself.
There could be drive-through penalties with a 4X.
You're absolutely right. Dickinson finds himself 3.5 seconds back. Not super fast. Something that could be done. Tonlo has the inside line as they head to this double right-hander. The inside line is where you want to be. You can't fight too much on as a two-car wide battle, as we're slowly losing our words as well as our breath up here in the booth. But Tonlo is still holding on for dear life ahead of Nick Beaver, and Dickinson already half a second being caught up to the back of these two. So you've got to wonder if he has enough time. What is it, 5 minutes to make up a 3-second gap? Can it be done? And more importantly, will it be done?
If anybody can do it out on this circuit, I would put my money behind Dickinson, that 64 machine. Let's see, does anybody come down pit road with a drive-through penalty on this lap? It's going to be very, very close. Doesn't look like either driver down pit road. Let's get the replay queued up here, Gareth, of that massive turn one incident. The cars just get hooked up there, and Dickinson definitely gets the worst end out of it, but barely lifts through the grass. So that was extremely impressive.
Definitely, definitely something that we are very, very happy to witness, honestly, because there was nothing malicious at all in that. It was just an unfortunate meeting together of the fenders, and so these drivers, unfortunately, Dickinson gets the rough end of that deal, but thankfully, as we all know, everyone in the J2ICS Cup Series, a great driver and a great mate to everyone else. So, thankfully, nothing malicious involved in that intent, as Dickinson gets a slightly another off track there, as he is trying desperately to close the gap. Not as quickly as he wants to see it, though, as Tonlo and Beaver continue their battle up front. This is absolutely, I know we've said it over and over again, but I can't stress to you just how crazy it is that we've come all this way and we've got a battle for the lead between two drivers that were trundling around.
Mostly fourth and fifth most of the time.
Yeah, well, exactly. I was going to say between third and fifth for the majority of the race. with Dickinson seeming to have a surefire lead, and it has just absolutely been thrown away at this point, and that is heartbreaking for Dickinson, but I'm
Dickinson's
sure
down
as he
pit
comes
road.
down, so he has been caused that issue, so he's going to have a drive-through penalty, and that's going to put him completely out of it as Donlow and Nick Beaver, we're going to have to watch and wait and see who gets the outcome that they're looking for out of these two.
Dickinson serves the drive-through penalty, still in third place, but now he's 12.2 seconds back from Tonlow and Beaver. We assume neither one of these drivers has the drive-through. We were worried about it with Dickinson, and now it's going to be a two-car shootout. Beaver pulls up alongside Tonlow, covers the inside line. Beaver takes over the race lead, putting a quick 3/10 on that number 04 machine. Tonlow, does he have the fuel to make it to the end here? 2.5 minutes left to go at Interlagos. The first crown jewel race. All of a sudden, it is a two-car shootout if both these guys have the fuel to make it till the end. Tonlow was doing such a good job keeping Beaver at bay, but now Beaver quickly gaining a half second on the number 04 Porsche. All of a sudden, Beaver, the Ford, who was gonna be happy with a third, 2 minutes left to go, is rocking and rolling here as we see Book pull off the race line, allowing these race leaders by, and Beaver is looking very, very good here.
Yeah, less than 2 minutes to go, James. We've got 2 laps left in it as these two drivers make their way over the start-finish line for the final 2 laps, barring any incidents. It's going to be very interesting. I'm not sure how many incident points these two drivers have left, but it's not going to be many, that is for sure, as Urko is coming out of pit road as he had to come down another time, as Tonlow continues to try and find a way through past Nick Beaver. But Nick Beaver has a nice bit of a gap right now as it closes back up, and Beaver may have gotten off track there. It's going to be pretty close, as I said, all race so far. That turn right there at the outside of turn 4, loving to give these drivers a 1x that I'm not quite sure is well deserved. It's a very spicy one, that one, and personally I do not like getting it off track back there, and it's very hard to avoid. But Tonlow now half a second fallen back, and Nick Beaver is going to be very happy to see that one.
Yeah, and that's part of the broadcast software as well. Sometimes it doesn't exactly tell us if drivers have received an incident point. It'll kind of flash a message and say the drivers have an off track. Sometimes that doesn't quite match up with the iRacing reporting system. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm curious to see, Gareth. I think, excuse me, a big sneeze. So yes, this is going to be the white flag. They are going to have to do another lap here. Tonlow, if he has anything left in the tank, literally and figuratively, now is the time, and he is going for it into turn 1.
Yeah, he's going to be the outside. Beaver's blocking the inside, side by side. They're still side by side. Beaver loses the back end. Tonlow takes over the lead into turn 2. That's a pass that we did not expect to see, especially into turn 2, which is notorious for having cars come together, but somehow makes it stick, James.
Yeah, I'm at a loss for words here. Tonlow up by 0.2 of a second. Beaver is going to throw everything at him here, knowing he's got an extra lap of fuel. Surely at this point, drivers are going to know if they're going to make it till the end. I bet you they were hoping, especially in the case of Beaver, hoping for the checker to be out that time by, but these guys have not backed off the pace at all, and it's going to be a 2-car shootout to the end. It's Tonlow up front. Beaver taking a look to the inside line. Dickinson sitting in third. He's about 15 seconds back after snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Oh, a big block there from Tonlow, trying to keep Beaver at bay. Beaver has been on the offensive this entire time. Less than a quarter of a lap left to go, and we're side by side once more.
Yeah, it's so difficult to get the run out of the final corner is going to be the deciding factor. Beaver tries to stick the nose in. It's not going to be enough.
He throws it away.
And he loses the back end just at the exit, and Tonlow is going to have enough of a gap. Beaver is not going to be able to do it. Tonlow is going to make it to the end as long as he doesn't splutter across the line, and it looks like he's going to make the distance. Tonlow takes the race win.
Wow, what a race. Tonlow 0.46 seconds up over Nick Beaver. Dickinson's going to lock it up here in third here as he approaches the line. I mean, from start to finish, this has probably been one of my favorite races I think I've ever called, with spectacular racing all across the circuit. And these guys just putting on an absolute clinic here today.
That was nothing short of incredible. You can see a lot of the drivers coming across the line and flicking their headlights in celebration that the race is finally over. We saw Nick Beaver flash the headlights saying great racing to Tonlo out in front as well. I cannot wait to talk to these three drivers once they get up here in the booth. It's going to be something definitely worth listening to. So don't go anywhere as we get ready for some driver interviews.
All right, we are back with some of the top three making their way up here to the booth. Let's start things off with Mr. Sean Dickinson. Sean, welcome to the top three. I know that's not how you wanted to end tonight, but still a good points night, keeping you in the championship by the time it's all said and done after the crown jewel.
Yeah, it was an okay race. It was too close on tire wear, so we just decided not to take tires because that's always a big trade-off with these long races. Unfortunately, I'm not a fan of that at all. But so my car fell off, couldn't do anything.
Now,
So.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Gareth.
No, okay. G'day, Sean. How you doing? That was absolutely fantastic watching the battle there. We were absolutely losing our minds up here in the booth, and Penny as well in chat. Now, that was an incredible race. Unfortunately, you did have to serve that drive-through, but before you even served that, what was happening? You had to pit a little bit earlier on, and James reckon he figured it out. You had to do a bit of a splash and dash, and that was what caused those two drivers to catch up to you. Was it truly a splash and dash, and did you not have enough just to make it just that little bit towards the end?
Yeah, I just needed 6 liters of fuel to make it like the last 2 laps. I don't like fuel saving. It makes the racing so boring. So I'd rather do a splash and dash and kill a little bit of time than I would try and save fuel the entire race and just, sit there swinging the wheel back and forth. So, but I did that at that time to include myself in the battle, and unfortunately my tires were right on the edge. And as soon as I started battling with Beaver, that's when I started feeling it, starting getting loose everywhere, and couldn't push the car anymore. So I knew I was out at that point.
Well, Sean, you guys still put on a fantastic show. You had family coming out cheering you on, and definitely a well-deserved and hard-fought third. Before I let you go and kind of relax after a grueling event, who do you want to give a shout to that helped to bring home this third for you and the team?
I just got to give a shout out to my team, SimCity Racing, all our sponsors behind us, and yeah, the support from Josh and Noah, helping build, test, all that kind of stuff, So just a whole group of people.
Awesome. Sean, always a pleasure, bud, and hope to have you back up here in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Garrett, that was Sean Dickinson joining us up in third. But up next, a man, a legend in his own mind, Nick Beaver. Welcome back to the second top spot. And, man, you've got to be exhausted after that because you're one of the few drivers that never got a break out there.
Yeah, right. I am pooped. I am basking in my own sweat. I stink. I smell like a locker room. It's terrible. But man, that was so much fun. Congratulations to Tonlo. Hell of a drive. We raced each other clean. That was fun.
Yeah, that was absolutely incredible. G'day, Nick. It's Gareth talking to you now. But I'm
Hello.
just gonna say like that battle was. I can't stress enough how amazing that was. But yeah, like you said, very, very clean. And I've got to wonder what was going through your mind when you were trying to defend that last heading into turn one, I should say, for that the start of the final lap, and you had to give that spot off to Tonlo as he made that move to the inside. Were you trying to fight tooth and nail, or did you not have enough left in your tires to really keep level with him? And were you hoping that that lap just passed would be the end of it? We had 10 seconds left, which
Yeah.
unfortunately was what did it in for you here tonight.
Yeah, well, it was really just overdriving on the last lap. I had plenty of buffer, I had plenty of fuel left, and I had plenty of tire left, frankly, just before coming in here talking to Tonlo a little bit. And he said maybe with 40 minutes left is when his tires started getting a bit questionable. But I felt through the entire run that I had tires underneath me. It was just a case of overdriving turn one a little bit, and you never practice running side by side going into corners, and I think I may have let off the brake a little too quickly, which kind of tossed the rear end around. So that was just overdriving on my part. It's a lesson learned, but man, I'll take home a second after a race like that. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, a win would have been cool, but got to race with what is the J2I big guns. You see Dickinson, Tonlo. I'd say Joshua Spears, Nodovan, Simply Steve. All of these guys are so quick, and I got to race with all of them. So, um, yeah, a lot of fun, but that was a challenging 2 hours.
Well, Beaver, thank you guys for putting on such a great show. It was a blast for us to call up here in the booth, and going to be interesting to see how you guys have shaken up the point standing after this crown jewel with the bonus points being applied. But before I let you go and unwind after this one, who do you want to give a shout out to that helped bring home a second place for you in Love Seat?
Yes, well, love seat, of course. My teammate Captain CK put a lot of time into practice this week, and he did a lot of work with setups that he would share with me. We'd both try them out. I would make adjustments. So he put a lot of work into this. Big shout out to Captain CK. Thanks for all your work. Yeah, and then you guys, James, Gareth, thank you for sticking out the 2 hours. I'm excited to go back and watch all of this. It was an action-packed 2 hours for myself, at least.
Awesome. Couldn't do it without you guys, Nick. Always a pleasure, buddy, and hope to have you back up here in the coming weeks.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, sir. All right, Garrett, that was Nick Beaver bringing home in second, but up next we've got Tonlo. A little bit of racing stripes on the O side of that 04 Porsche machine, but in the top spot, and it looked like earlier you were going to be content with a third, fourth, or fifth. All of a sudden, the final 15 minutes, you're up there in the mix of it.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. As soon as Sean came out of the pits, I was like, okay, I can stick behind them. And then it just seemed like they just had more pace, and because my tires were shot, and I was just like, all right, let's hope I can keep in the draft. And I started losing them, and then I guess they started making a couple mistakes on a lap or two that I didn't make as many mistakes, and I caught right back up. And then once we all made a mistake coming out of the last corner, I guess you would call it the last corner, where we all almost pretty much ran wide. That was when it was on.
Yeah, Tonlo, talk to us about that a bit more because that '04 machine was seemingly on rails. I mean, we've heard you before and talking to Nick as well. He was saying that, you were telling him that you felt like you didn't have any tire underneath you, but it certainly seemed like you used up every single bit of rubber that you had in that battle and making that move to, I should say, the outside of one to the inside of two. I've never seen two drivers go side by side and actually make that one work. I mean, what was the idea behind that? Just desperation to see if you can get a move there, or really trying to psych out Nick and hoping he would give it to you? And unfortunately for him, he lost the rear end and allowed you to get out in front without too much difficulty. Although you did have to stack him up behind you for the rest of that lap and able to pull off a win here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into that last lap, I just figured I would go for a desperate move. I I've made the outside line work in a variety of different tracks where it's kind of set up like that, just to try and carry more speed into the corner and then just kind of place the car so they can't turn it, just like a block pass pretty much. But the sketchy part came in when it was the last lap and I had no tires. I mean, the last 20 minutes at almost every corner I was losing the rear and trying to just go in for a dive like that, I didn't know if I was going to be able to hold it. I was very thankful for myself that Beaver seemed to lose it right there in that first corner because that allowed him to just keep that position. And I knew as soon as I could get ahead of him, he couldn't drag me. So I just had to keep a defensive line and force him to have to make a move, which he almost did. But he made his move in a corner where as long as I can keep that inside line for the next corner, I would have that position. So a little bit of luck for sure, but definitely a little bit of a desperate move going into the first corner on the last lap.
Well, Tonlo, glad it worked out well for you. That was, we've said it a bunch tonight, but that was an absolute blast for us to call the action here at Interlagos. Should be walking away with the points lead by the time it's all said and done. The dust has settled. And my friend, you've got the privilege, the pleasure, the final send-offs of the night. Who do you want to give a shout to that helps make this win possible for you?
Just like always, thanks to my wife because this race started an hour early and it's already hard enough to make the 10 o'clock race. So to be able to make the 9 o'clock race, she stepped up for that to let me do that. So I'm very thankful for her.
Awesome. Very well said. Tonlo, congratulations on a massive win and hope to have you back up here more throughout the season.
Oh, thank you.
Gareth, that was a very tired Tonlo. Oh, that's good alliteration. Good for me. Bringing home the top spot here at Interlagos. It was an action-packed crown jewel. Very briefly, walk me through your thoughts of tonight's main event.
That was absolutely pure definition of what a crown jewel is made to be. 2 hours of grueling endurance racing, white knuckle behind the wheel. Absolutely amazing battling all across the track, right down to the very last minute with two drivers battling it out for the win. Absolutely incredible driving. I can't stress enough that that was probably the best broadcast that I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. And whether it was down to the company that I was with, James, or the people in the chat group, the spectators watching at home, or the drivers putting on the actual show itself, it was absolutely incredible. Very, very happy to see it. I look forward to seeing the next Crown Jewel event at Indianapolis in a few months' time. But before then, our next race, the Sprint Series, the LMP3 machines, are going to be in Long Beach next week, as well as the next endurance race at Sebring International Raceway. So very much looking forward to how this championship continues to evolve and shape, as well as how the drivers do in the future. So I'm looking forward to it, James.
Very well said. An excellent recap. Tonight, it was Tonlo in the top spot, Beaver finishing second, and Dickinson rounding out the top three. On behalf of the J2ICS Cup Endurance Series, sponsored by Designers Home Gallery, my name has been James East, accompanied by the world-famous Aussie Gareth McAllister. Thank you all so much for spending your Wednesday night with us, and we'll see you at the next one. Have a great night, everybody.